The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours, and nothing had changed. Ambassador Park Min-jun sat in the human delegation section, watching the chaos unfold before him. Representatives from 47 different species shouted, argued, and pleaded with each other. The translation devices built into the chamber worked overtime, turning alien words into something everyone could understand. The problem was simple. The solution was not. The Velcron Empire was coming, and no one knew how to stop them. Min-jun glanced at his companion, Captain Lee Soo-jin, who sat beside him in her dark blue uniform. She looked calm, but he knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. Her eyes tracked every speaker, analyzing everything like the military officer she was. "They're panicking," Soo-jin whispered in Korean, keeping her voice low. "Can you blame them?" Min-jun replied in the same language. "The Velcron fleet will be here in 3 days." On the central display, a holographic map showed the approaching threat. Red icons marked 500 warships, all moving toward the Council's home system. The Velcron Empire had been conquering its way across this part of the galaxy for 20 years. They had destroyed 6 civilizations completely. Now, they wanted the Council worlds. A tall, insect-like delegate from the Chiric species stood up. His translation device made his clicking sounds into words. "We have tried everything. Our combined fleet cannot match their numbers. Our weapons barely scratch their shields. We are doomed. We could surrender," suggested a Morphean representative, her tentacles writhing nervously. Perhaps the Velcron would show mercy. Bitter laughter filled the chamber. Everyone knew the Velcron showed no mercy. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. The council leader, an ancient Thessian named Elder Vorn, raised his hands for silence. His skin was wrinkled and gray, and he looked tired. "We will not surrender, but we must be realistic. Our military forces are insufficient. Our planetary shields will hold for perhaps a week under sustained bombardment. We need a miracle." I Fing. Min-jun felt dozens of eyes turn toward the human section. He knew what they were thinking. In that time, humans had become known as excellent traders, skilled diplomats, and clever engineers. They operated merchant vessels throughout Council space. They helped negotiate treaties. They sold useful technology and bought exotic goods. But warriors? No. Humans were not warriors. Earth had contributed a small defense force to the Council fleet, of course. 20 ships, all designed for patrol duties and escort missions. Nothing that would help against 500 Velcron warships. Everyone knew humans were peaceful. Soft, some species said privately. Not fighters. Min-jun had worked hard to build that reputation. So had every human ambassador before him. A Velcron transmission interrupted the session. The holographic display shifted, showing the face of Admiral Zroth Thor. He was a massive creature, covered in thick scales, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like burning coals. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, making them incredibly strong and dense. "Galactic Council," Zroth Thor's voice boomed through the chamber. "You have seen what happens to those who resist the Velcron Empire. 6 civilizations tried to fight us. 6 civilizations are now dust. We do not wish to destroy you, but we will, if necessary. You have 72 hours to surrender. Open your worlds to Velcron rule, and you will be allowed to live as our subjects. Refuse, and we will erase every Council world from existence. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Silence filled the chamber for a long moment. Then the panic exploded again. Representatives shouted over each other. Some called for immediate surrender. Others wanted to fight to the last breath. A few simply broke down in despair. Elder Vorn looked older than ever. He turned to Min-jun, and their eyes met across the chamber. "Ambassador Park, Does humanity have any counsel to offer? You have been quiet throughout this crisis. Every eye in the chamber focused on the human delegation. Min Jun stood slowly, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. He had hoped to avoid this moment. Humanity had hoped to avoid this moment for 200 years. Elder Forn, honored representatives, Min Jun began, his voice steady. I must contact my government before I can respond. The situation has become critical, and I need authorization for what I am about to propose. You need permission to tell us to surrender? Someone shouted from the back of the chamber. No, Min Jun said quietly. I need permission for something else entirely. Something humanity has not done in a very long time. Confusion rippled through the council. Su Jin stood up beside Min Jun, her military bearings suddenly very obvious. Several representatives noticed the change in her posture. She looked different somehow. Dangerous. How long do you need? Elder Vorn asked. 48 hours, Min Jun said. That leaves only 24 hours before the Velcron deadline. A delegate protested. I understand, Min Jun replied. But I assure you, if my government agrees to what I am about to request, 24 hours will be more than enough time. The chamber erupted in questions. But Min Jun simply bowed respectfully and left, with Su Jin following close behind. They walked through the corridors of the council station in silence until they reached the secure human communications room. Once inside, with the door sealed and encryption activated, Su Jin turned to him. Are you really going to ask for authorization? I have to, Min Jun said, his fingers moving across the communication console. We can't let the council fall. And we can't let the Velcron continue their expansion. They'll reach Earth eventually. The secret will be out, Su Jin said softly. Everyone will know what we are. What we were. I know. Min Jun finished entering his security codes. But what choice do we have? The quantum communication link activated instantly, connecting directly to Earth High Command. The face that appeared on the screen was an older woman with sharp eyes and gray hair. Fleet Admiral Choi Un-suk, the highest-ranking military officer in the Earth Defense Force. Ambassador Park, she said formally. I've been watching the council session. The situation is critical. Yes, Admiral, Min Jun said. I'm requesting authorization code Omega-7. Un-suk's expression didn't change, but Min Jun saw her hand tighten on her desk. Omega-7 was the authorization code for unsealing the old weapons. The ones humanity had locked away after the unification wars nearly destroyed Earth. You understand what you're asking? Un-suk said carefully. I do, Admiral. The Velcron will not stop. If the Council falls, they will eventually reach human space. And if we fight them with our current fleet, we will lose. The only way to stop them is to show them what we used to be. For a long moment, Un-suk said nothing. Her eyes moved to something off-screen, probably reviewing classified reports. Then, she looked back at Min Jun. The President and the Security Council have been discussing this possibility. We hoped it would never come to this. We've worked for 2 centuries to make the galaxy see us as merchants and peacemakers, not as weapons. I know, Min Jun said. But sometimes, peace can only be protected by those willing to fight for it. I'm pleased now. Un-suk nodded slowly. Authorization code Omega-7 is granted. Captain Lee, you are hereby activated to full military command. Report to Fleet Admiral Song at Lunar Base Serenity. He will brief you on the assets being unsealed. Su Jin saluted sharply. Yes, Admiral. Ambassador Park, you will inform the Council that Earth is responding to the crisis. Tell them our fleet will arrive at the Council homeworld within 48 hours. Tell them nothing else. Number. Understood, Admiral. And Park? Un-suk's voice softened slightly. I hope we're making the right choice. So do I, Admiral. The transmission ended. Min Jun and Su Jin looked at each other in the sudden silence. 200 years. Su Jin said quietly. We've been hiding for 200 years. Tomorrow, everyone will know the truth. Not the whole truth, Minjun said. They'll know we have weapons. They won't know why we sealed them away. They won't understand what it cost us to become what we are now. Cross. We have depersited. Cross. We won't know why we sealed. Sujin touched the military insignia on her uniform. Most species thought it was decorative. They didn't know it represented bloodlines going back to the Unification Wars. They didn't know her great-great-grandmother had been a ship captain during the darkest days of human history. Will they fear us? Sujin asked. When they see what we can do? Probably, Minjun admitted. But I'd rather they fear us than watch the Velcron destroy everything. We can deal with fear. We can prove we're still the same people who've been their friends and allies. But we can't do any of that if the Velcron win. Sujin nodded and headed for the door. She paused with her hand on the panel. Minjun, when the fighting starts, some of the council species will wonder why we never told them. Why we let them think we were weak. Minjun thought about the history files he had studied. The Unification Wars had killed 3 billion people. They had built machines that could erase cities in seconds. And they had used those weapons against each other until the survivors looked at the devastation and decided to never let it happen again. The weapons had been sealed. The old warships had been hidden on the dark side of the moon and in asteroid fields. Humanity had chosen to start over, to be something better than the monsters they had become. Tell them the truth if they ask, Minjun said finally. We hid our weapons because we were ashamed of what we had built. We were afraid of what we might become if we kept being soldiers. So we chose to be merchants instead. We chose peace. And now we have to choose war again, Sujin said. No, Minjun corrected her gently. Now we have to protect the peace we've built. That's different. The old humanity fought because they enjoyed power. We're going to fight because we have no other choice. We're going to fight to stop people who would destroy everything good we've found out here among the stars. Sujin smiled slightly. That's a nice speech. Think the council will buy it? I hope so. Because in 48 hours, they're going to see things that will terrify them. They're going to wonder if they've been living next to monsters this whole time. We need them to understand that we're still their friends. We're just friends who remember how to be very, very dangerous when we need to be. Sujin saluted and left. Minjun stood alone in the communications room for a long moment, then returned to the council chamber. Elder Vorn looked at him expectantly as he entered. The chamber had quieted somewhat, but tension still filled the air. Representatives watched Minjun with desperate hope. Honored Council, Minjun said formally. I have contacted my government. Earth will respond to the Velcron threat. Our fleet will arrive at the Council homeworld within 48 hours. 20 ships? Someone scoffed. What difference will 20 ships make against 500? Minjun met the speaker's eyes. We're not sending 20 ships. We're sending something else. Something we haven't used in a very long time. What does that mean? Elder Vorn asked. It means, Minjun said, carefully, choosing his words with great precision, that humanity asks the Council to trust us for 48 hours. When our fleet arrives, you will understand. Until then, I can say nothing more. The chamber exploded with questions and protests, but Minjun simply bowed and returned to his seat. He had said all he could. Now everything depended on what happened when the old weapons woke up. On the dark side of Earth's moon, massive hangar doors that had been sealed for 2 centuries began to open. Warning lights activated in facilities that had been dark for longer than most council species had known humanity existed. Ancient systems came online, running through diagnostic checks that had not been performed in generations. And deep in those facilities, in the cold and darkness of space, something stirred. Something that humanity had built long ago and locked away, hoping never to use again. The war machines were waking up, and the galaxy was about to learn the truth about Earth's peaceful merchants and gentle diplomats. They had not always been peaceful. They had not always been gentle. And they had never, ever forgotten how to fight. Captain Lee Soo-jin had never been to lunar base Serenity. Most humans hadn't. It was not on any public maps. Tourist shuttles flew past this region of the moon without ever knowing what lay beneath the gray dust and ancient craters. Even most Earth Defense Force personnel had no idea it existed. The transport shuttle descended toward coordinates that showed nothing but empty lunar surface. Then, as they approached, massive doors began to open in the ground. They were each a kilometer wide, disguised to look like natural terrain. Dust that had settled for 2 centuries billowed up as the ancient mechanisms engaged. Soo-jin felt her breath catch as the shuttle dropped into the facility. The hangar stretched out in all directions, so vast she could not see the far walls. And everywhere she looked, she saw ships, not like the clean, efficient patrol vessels that humanity operated in Council space. These were different. They looked predatory even when motionless. Their hulls were dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Strange geometries covered their surfaces, and even powered down, they seemed to radiate menace. "Welcome to Serenity, Captain," a voice said over the comm. "This is Fleet Admiral Song. Proceed to Docking Bay 7. We have much to discuss, and very little time." The shuttle landed, and Soo-jin stepped out onto a platform that had not felt footsteps in living memory. The air was cold and tasted recycled. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow. Crew members moved through the facility, but they looked nervous. Many were historians and engineers, not soldiers. They were here because they had studied the old technology, not because they had ever expected to use it. Fleet Admiral Song met her at the platform. He was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore an old-style military uniform, one from before the modern era. It looked strange on him, like a costume from a museum. "Captain Lee," he said formally, "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "As do I, Admiral," Soo-jin replied. Song gestured for her to follow. They walked through corridors lined with equipment that looked ancient and futuristic at the same time. The technology was old, yes, but it had been cutting edge once, and based on what Soo-jin knew of modern Council weapons, it was still far beyond anything the current galaxy used. "How much do you know about the Unification Wars?" Song asked as they walked. "What everyone knows," Soo-jin said. Earth was divided. Nations fought each other. 3 billion people died. Finally, the survivors unified under a single government and sealed away the weapons that had nearly destroyed us. "That's the simplified version," Song said. "The truth is more complicated. The Unification Wars lasted 40 years. They started with conventional weapons, then nuclear weapons, then things much worse. By the end, humanity had learned to manipulate the basic forces of reality itself. We could tear holes in space. We could stop time in localized areas. We could make matter simply cease to exist." He stopped at a window that overlooked the main hangar. Soo-jin looked down at the ships below. There were 12 of them, each roughly the same size as a Council battlecruiser. But they looked wrong somehow, like they did not quite belong in normal space. "We called them the Requiem class," Song continued. "Each one was designed to end wars, not win them. Mind you, end them. They were so powerful that any side possessing even one could force everyone else to negotiate. That was the theory. Anyway, what went wrong?" Soo-jin asked. "Both sides built them," Song said quietly. "When everyone has weapons that can destroy everything, someone always decides to strike first." The final battle of the Unification Wars involved 8 Requiem-class ships firing on each other. When the dust settled, Australia was gone. Just gone. Erased from existence along with 200 million people. Soo-jin felt cold. She had known the wars were terrible, but this detail was not in the public histories. After that, the survivors sealed everything. Song said. The Requiem ships, the reality manipulation technology, all of it. We decided to start over. We focused on becoming something better than what we had been. When we met the Council species, we made sure they saw us as traitors and diplomats. We never wanted anyone to know what we were capable of, and now we have to become weapons again, Sujin said. No. Song corrected her, and his voice was firm. We're not becoming weapons. We're using weapons to protect something worth protecting. There's a difference, Captain. Our ancestors forgot that difference. And it nearly cost us everything. We cannot forget it now. He turned from the window and looked at her directly. You've been chosen to command the flagship, the Requiem herself. Do you know why? Sujin shook her head. Because your psychological profile shows something rare. You have the tactical skills to use these weapons effectively, but you also have the moral strength to use them reluctantly. You understand that every shot you fire is a failure of something better. I'm not sure I'm worthy of that trust, Admiral, Sujin said honestly. None of us are, Song replied. But you're the best choice we have. Come. Let me show you what you'll be commanding. They took a lift down to the hangar floor. Up close, the Requiem was even more intimidating. The hull was midnight black, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when Sujin was not looking directly at them. The ship was 700 meters long, shaped like a blade. A boarding ramp extended, and they entered the ship. Inside, systems were coming online after centuries of sleep. Lights flickered on one by one. Displays showed text in Old Korean and English, languages that had evolved significantly in 200 years. The bridge was surprisingly small. Only 10 crew stations surrounded a central command chair. Advanced AI handled most shipboard functions, meaning the Requiem needed far fewer crew than modern vessels. The AI is called Memoria, Song explained. It's a quantum intelligence, capable of making tactical decisions faster than any organic mind. But it cannot fire weapons without human authorization. That safeguard is built into its core programming. A holographic interface appeared above the command chair. A pleasant female voice spoke in modern Korean. Captain Lee Sujin, I am Memoria, tactical intelligence for the Requiem. My systems have been dormant for 203 years, 4 months, and 16 days. All primary systems are operational. Weapons systems are currently sealed pending command authorization. Welcome aboard. Thank you, Memoria, Sujin said, feeling strange talking to a ship that was older than her great-great-grandparents. Let me show you what the Requiem can do, Song said. He called up displays, showing weapon specifications that made Sujin's blood run cold. The primary weapon was called a spatial severance cannon. It did not fire projectiles or energy beams. Instead, it created a targeted rupture in space-time itself. Anything caught in the effect simply stopped existing, erased from reality at the quantum level. No shields could stop it, because shields existed in normal space, and the weapon operated outside those rules. The defensive systems were equally terrifying. The Requiem could project a quantum displacement field that shunted incoming attacks into pocket dimensions. Missiles, energy weapons, even physical projectiles would simply vanish before reaching the hull. And if something did get through, the hull itself was made from degenerate matter held in stasis fields, making it nearly indestructible. Then there was the time dilation system. The Requiem could create localized fields where time moved at different speeds. An enemy ship could be frozen in time while the Requiem maneuvered freely. Or the Requiem itself could speed up, moving and thinking faster than anything else in the battle space. How do you fight something like this? Sujin asked quietly. You don't, Song said. That was the problem. These ships were designed to be invincible. And when both sides had invincible weapons, the only question was, who could erase the other first? Sujin sat in the command chair. It adjusted to her body automatically, interfaces appearing at her fingertips. She could feel the ship around her, sense its systems through the neural link that was part of the chair. The Requiem was awake and ready, and it wanted to fly again. The other 11 ships are being crewed as we speak, Song said. Most of the crew are like you, historians and researchers who specialized in old military technology. We've been training in simulators for the past few hours, getting used to systems we've only read about in files. Will we be ready in time? Sujin asked. We'll have to be. The Velcron fleet will reach the Council homeworld in 46 hours. We leave in 12 hours. That gives you and your crew time to run through basic maneuvers and weapons tests. Weapons tests? Sujin looked alarmed. Admiral, if we fire these things near Earth, we won't be testing them here, Song assured her. There's an asteroid field in the outer system designated for this purpose. The asteroids are made of solid iron, chosen specifically because they're hard to destroy. They'll give us a good indication of what the Requiem can do. Over the next hours, the rest of the Requiem's crew arrived. They were all specialists in historical technology, all chosen for their psychological stability and moral clarity. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo, the weapons officer, had written her dissertation on the ethics of reality manipulation warfare. Commander Kim Tae-hyun, the navigator, had spent 10 years studying the navigation logs from the Unification Wars. Each crew member had dedicated their lives to understanding the past, never expecting to live through it. They gathered on the bridge as Song prepared to leave. He looked at each of them, in turn. I know you're afraid, he said. I would be worried if you weren't. These weapons terrify me, and I've studied them for 40 years. But remember why we're doing this. The Velcron Empire will not stop until every free species in the galaxy is enslaved or dead. The Council species are our friends. They've been our partners and allies for 2 centuries. We cannot let them fall. What if we become monsters? Ji-woo asked quietly. What if using these weapons changes us? That's why you were chosen, Song said. Because you ask that question. Because you understand that power without restraint is the path to everything our ancestors did wrong. You will be tempted to use maximum force. You will have the power to erase entire fleets with a single shot. But you must remember that every life you take, even an enemy life, is a failure of something better. He moved to the exit ramp. The Council species will be terrified when they see what you can do. Some of them will wonder if they've been living next to monsters. Prove them wrong. Fight only as much as necessary. Disable enemy ships rather than destroying them when possible. Show the galaxy that humanity learned from its mistakes. After Song left, the crew ran through system checks. Everything came online perfectly. Systems that had slept for 2 centuries working as if they had been built yesterday. Memoria guided them through the procedures, her voice patient and calm. Finally, it was time for the weapons test. The Requiem lifted off from the hangar, its gravity systems making the motion so smooth that Sujin barely felt they were moving. The other 11 ships followed, a formation that had not flown together in 200 years. They reached the asteroid field within an hour. The asteroids were massive chunks of iron, each one several kilometers across. Sujin designated one as the target. Memoria, charge the spatial severance cannon, she ordered. Minimum yield. Charging. Memoria confirmed. Weapon. Ready. Sujin took a breath. Fire. The Requiem did not shake or recoil. There was no dramatic light show. One moment the asteroid existed. The next moment, a perfectly spherical section of it simply vanished. 20 kilometers of solid iron erased from reality in an instant. The rest of the asteroid, suddenly unbalanced, began to tumble. The bridge was silent. Ji-woo stared at her display, her face pale. Captain, that was minimum yield. We have settings that go up to. I know, Sujin said quietly. She did know. At maximum yield, the spatial severance cannon could erase a small moon. Test the defensive systems next. They fired probes at the ship, simulating incoming attacks. The quantum displacement field activated automatically. Missiles simply vanished before impact, shunted into pocket dimensions where they exploded harmlessly outside normal space. Energy beams disappeared as if they had never existed. Physical projectiles were sent away before they could touch the hull. "Nothing's getting through," Taehyun said, awe in his voice. "We're completely invulnerable." "Nothing is invulnerable," Sujin corrected him. "These systems just make us very, very hard to hurt. Remember that. Confidence becomes arrogance, and arrogance gets people killed." They spent the remaining hours drilling on maneuvers and coordination. The 12 ships moved in formation, each one operated by a crew that was learning ancient lessons. By the time they were done, everyone understood both the terrible power they commanded and the responsibility that came with it. Finally, the moment arrived. The fleet formed up and engaged their quantum drives, a faster-than-light system that operated differently from the Council's slipstream technology. Space folded around them, and they began the journey to the Council homeworld. In the command chair, Sujin felt the ship around her. The Requiem was happy to be moving again. She could sense it through the neural link, an AI that had been waiting for 2 centuries to fulfill its purpose. But that purpose had been designed by people who thought power alone could solve problems. "Memoria," Sujin said quietly. "What was your last mission?" "Before the ships were sealed? My final mission was classified," Memoria replied. "But I can tell you the result. I participated in the final battle of the Unification Wars. I fired 17 times. Each shot removed an enemy vessel from existence. 3,214 people died by my weapons. After the battle, I asked my captain if we had won. What did they say? They said that when you have to ask if you won, you probably lost. Then they cried. I have spent 200 years analyzing that statement. I believe I finally understand it." "What's your understanding?" Sujin asked. "Victory is not measured in enemies destroyed," Memoria said. "It is measured in what you protect and who you become in the process of protecting it. We were designed as weapons, but perhaps we can be something more. Perhaps we can be shields instead." Sujin smiled slightly. "I think you've learned well, Memoria. Let's hope we can teach that lesson to the Velcron Empire without destroying them in the process." The fleet traveled through folded space, moving toward a confrontation that would change everything. Behind them, Earth waited nervously. Ahead of them, the Council braced for what was coming, and the Velcron Empire prepared their 500 warships, confident in their superiority. None of them were ready for what humanity's forgotten war machines would do when they finally arrived. Admiral Zrath Thor stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Endless Conquest, and felt pleased with himself. Before him, displayed on screens that covered the entire forward wall, the Galactic Council's home system waited helplessly. Their pathetic fleet of 200 ships had arranged itself in a defensive formation around the inhabited worlds. It would make no difference. 500 ships, Zrath Thor said to his second-in-command. "Against their 200. This will be over quickly. Should we offer surrender terms again, Admiral?" the officer asked. "No," Zrath Thor replied. "They had their chance. Now, they will learn what happens when lesser species refuse the Empire's generosity." Zrath Thor was a Velcron of the old bloodlines, from a family that had conquered 7 star systems before the Empire even existed. His species had evolved on a world with crushing gravity and lethal predators. They were built for war, with armored scales, 4 powerful arms, and reflexes faster than most species could track. Every Velcron was a warrior. Their entire culture celebrated strength and conquest, and they had never lost a battle. Not once in 20 years of expansion. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting an anomaly." "What kind of anomaly?" "Unknown, sir. It's a spatial distortion, appearing at the edge of the system. Energy readings are off the scale. It's like nothing in our database. Thanks for watching. I may be readings. Thanks for watching." Zrath Thor felt a moment of curiosity, but dismissed it. Probably some desperate attempt by the Council to deploy a new weapon. It would fail, like everything else they tried. Then the distortion resolved, and 12 ships appeared in normal space. Zrath Thor stared at the displays. The ships were smaller than his battle cruisers, each one maybe 700 meters long. Their hulls were dark, almost black, covered in strange geometric patterns. They looked old and outdated compared to the sleek Velkron warships. 12 ships? Zrath Thor laughed. The Council is even more desperate than I thought. What species built those? Some. The sensor officer worked at his console, running identification protocols. After a moment, his expression became confused. Admiral, the computer identifies them as human vessels, but that makes no sense. Humans don't have ships like that. They operate merchant vessels and small patrol craft. Humans? Zrath Thor's laughter grew louder. The merchants? The traders? They send 12 obsolete warships against my 500? This is insulting. Throughout the Velkron fleet, similar reactions occurred. Commanders looked at their screens with disbelief and amusement. Humans were known throughout the Council as peaceful, non-threatening species. They sold goods, negotiated treaties, and built trade stations. They were not warriors. On the Council fleet, the reaction was different. Ambassador Park Min-jun stood on the command deck of the Council's lead ship beside Elder Vorn. When the human fleet appeared, Min-jun closed his eyes briefly and took a deep breath. "That's what you were waiting for?" Elder Vorn asked, confusion in his voice. 12 ships? Ambassador, I appreciate the gesture, but 12 ships cannot turn this battle. The Velkron outnumber us badly already. Adding 12 more vessels will not change the outcome. Elder Vorn, Min-jun said quietly. I suggest you move your fleet back. Put at least 1 million kilometers between your ships and the Velkron. Why? What difference will that make? Because in about 5 minutes, you will see things that will be difficult to believe. I want your people safe. When that happens, the tone in Min-jun's voice made Elder Vorn hesitate. The human ambassador looked different somehow. He stood straighter, his expression harder than Vorn had ever seen. There was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Something that made the ancient Thessian wonder what humans really were beneath their friendly exteriors. All ships, Vorn ordered slowly, retreat to distance of 1 million kilometers. Maintain defensive formation. The Council fleet began to move. On the Velkron flagship, this caused more laughter. They're running already, Zrath Thor announced. Before we even fire a shot. This is what happens when weak species try to fight. They remember they are prey. Should we pursue, Admiral? An officer asked. Not yet. Let them retreat. Let them feel their fear grow. Then we will destroy them slowly, so they have time to regret their defiance. The 12 human ships moved forward in formation, positioning themselves between the Velkron fleet and the Council worlds. They looked impossibly small against the mass of Velkron warships. It was like watching insects challenge a stampede. Zrath Thor decided to be merciful. He would give the humans one chance to flee before destroying them. He opened a communication channel to the lead human vessel. Captain Lee Soo-jin's face appeared on his screen. Zrath Thor was surprised. She looked young, with sharp eyes, and an expression that showed no fear. Most species showed fear when facing the Velkron fleet. Human captain, Zrath Thor said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. I am Admiral Zrath Thor of the Velkron Empire. You have positioned your vessels between my fleet and my targets. This is foolish. I will give you one opportunity to withdraw. Take your 12 ships and leave this system. Do this, and I will let you live. Soo-jin looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady. Admiral Zrath Thor, I am Captain Lee Soo-jin of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity and our allies in the Galactic Council, I order you to withdraw your fleet from this system immediately. The Velkron command deck fell silent. Then laughter erupted. Zrath Thor himself laughed so hard his scales rattled. An order? The humans were giving him an order? Captain, Zrath Thor said when he could speak again. You have 12 ships. I have 500. You are either insane or stupid. Which is it? Neither, Sujin replied. I am a human who remembers what my species used to be. I am trying to give you a chance to survive. Please, withdraw your fleet. I don't want to do what I'm about to do. The tone of her voice made Zrath Thor pause. She did not sound afraid. She did not sound like she was bluffing. She sounded sad, like someone preparing to do something terrible, but necessary. You threaten me? Zrath Thor said, anger replacing amusement. You dare threaten the Velkron Empire? I'm not threatening you, Sujin said. I'm warning you. There's a difference. Last chance, Admiral. Withdraw now. Zrath Thor's anger exploded. Destroy them. All ships, open fire. I want those 12 vessels turned to dust. The communication channel closed. The Velkron fleet, all 500 ships, activated their weapons systems. Plasma cannons charged. Missile bays opened. Energy weapons locked onto targets. It was enough firepower to destroy a small planet. All ships fire, Zrath Thor commanded. Space lit up with destruction. Thousands of plasma bolts and energy beams erupted from the Velkron fleet. Missiles by the hundreds streaked toward the human ships. It was a wall of death, enough firepower to overwhelm any defense system ever built. The human ships did not move. They simply waited as the massive attack approached. On the Requiem's bridge, Sujin watched the incoming fire. Her crew was tense but focused. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo had her hands hovering over the weapons controls. Commander Kim Tae-hyun monitored the defensive systems. Memoria, Sujin said calmly. Activate quantum displacement fields. All ships. Acknowledged, the AI replied. Defensive systems engaging. The Velkron weapons reached the human ships. Then, something impossible happened. The plasma bolts simply vanished. Thousands of them, each one capable of melting through ship hulls, just ceased to exist before they could make contact. Energy beams disappeared, as if they had been switched off. Missiles flew toward the human vessels and then were simply gone, erased from space entirely. Not a single shot reached the human ships. Not one. On the Velkron flagship, silence filled the command deck. Every eye was fixed on the displays, watching the sensor data that made no sense. Their attack had been perfect. The weapons had fired correctly. Everything had worked exactly as it should. But the humans were undamaged. Not even scratched. What happened? Zrath Thor demanded. Where did our weapons go? Unknown, Admiral, the sensor officer said, his voice shaking. The weapons simply disappeared, approximately 1,000 meters from the human vessels. Our sensors detected brief spatial anomalies at the point of disappearance, but nothing else. It's as if the attacks were shunted into another dimension. That's impossible, Zrath Thor roared. No shield technology can do that. It's not shield technology, sir, another officer said quietly. At least, not any shield technology in our database. This is something completely different. On the Council fleet, Elder Vorn watched the displays with growing shock. He had seen the Velkron attack. He knew how powerful their weapons were. His own fleet's shields could not have survived even a fraction of that firepower. But the human ships had not even tried to dodge. They had simply made the attack disappear. What are they? Vorn whispered. Beside him, Ambassador Min-jun said nothing. His expression was sad, like someone watching a terrible secret revealed. Sujin opened a channel to the Velkron flagship. Admiral Zrath Thor, you have fired on us. By the laws of war, we are now permitted to respond. I'm going to demonstrate what humanity is capable of. I hope you're paying attention. Memoria, Sujin said, her voice heavy with reluctance. Designate 50 enemy vessels. Formation positions Alpha 7 through Alpha 57. Spatial severance cannon. Minimum yield. Sequential fire. Target designated. Memoria confirmed. Weapon charging. Captain, I remind you that even at minimum yield, the targeted vessels will be completely destroyed. All crew aboard those ships will die instantly. I know, Sujin said quietly. She looked at the displays, seeing the Velcron ships. Each one held hundreds of crew members, hundreds of lives. She had the power to erase them from existence with a thought. But they won't stop unless they understand what they're facing. Fire. The Requiem fired. There was no dramatic light show, no visible beam. Space simply rippled, and one of the Velcron battlecruisers ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. The next moment, there was only empty space where the ship had been. Not destroyed, not blown apart, just gone. Memoria fired again. Another ship vanished, then another. The sequential targeting meant the weapon fired once every 2 seconds. In the space of 100 seconds, 50 Velcron warships simply stopped existing. 300 meters of armored hull, hundreds of crew members, advanced weapons systems, all erased from reality completely. The Velcron fleet panicked. Ships broke formation. Commanders shouted, confused orders. Nothing in their training or experience had prepared them for weapons that simply removed targets from existence. Zrath Thor stared at his displays, watching 50 of his ships disappear. His mind tried to understand what he was seeing, but it made no sense. His scales had gone pale, a Velcron reaction to extreme stress. "What weapon is that?" he whispered. His sensor officer looked at the readings, his hands shaking as he worked. "Admiral, the human weapon appears to create localized ruptures in space-time. The targeted vessels are not destroyed. They are erased at the quantum level. There is no defense against this. Shields are meaningless because the weapon operates outside normal space." Zrath Thor felt something he had never experienced in his entire life. Fear. Real. Genuine. Fear. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessels," he ordered. "Every weapon we have, fire everything." The Velcron fleet responded. Thousands more weapons fired at the human ships. Energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, plasma torpedoes, fusion bombs. Everything the Empire had developed over centuries of conquest. It was 10 times the firepower of the first attack, and once again, none of it reached the human ships. The quantum displacement fields simply shunted everything into pocket dimensions. The humans sat calmly in the middle of the firestorm, completely untouched. Sujin watched the second attack disappear. She felt sick. She had just killed thousands of people. It did not matter that they were enemies. It did not matter that they had attacked first. She had used weapons that should never have been unsealed, and people had died because of it, but she could not stop now. The Velcron had to understand. "Memoria," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Deploy the planet killer countermeasure. I want them to see what we can defend against." In the Velcron fleet, Admiral Zrath Thor made a desperate decision. He ordered the deployment of their most powerful weapon, the one they had used to destroy 6 civilizations. It was a quantum compression bomb, designed to collapse matter at the atomic level. When it detonated, it would create a chain reaction that could destroy an entire planet. The Velcron called it the final word. The weapon launched from the flagship, accelerating toward the human fleet. It was massive, 50 meters long, covered in stabilization fields to keep the compressed matter contained until detonation. Zrath Thor watched it fly. This would work. It had to work. Nothing could survive the final word. The human ships would be obliterated, and this nightmare would end. On the Requiem, alarms sounded. Memoria's voice remained calm. "Captain, detecting Velcron planet killer weapon. Time to detonation. 30 seconds." Recommend immediate evasion. No, Sujin said. Let it come. Then show them what we can do. The quantum compression bomb reached the human fleet. The Velcron watched, hoping against hope that their ultimate weapon would succeed where everything else had failed. The bomb exploded, and then the explosion simply stopped. One moment, there was a growing sphere of destructive energy, enough to erase all 12 human ships and probably damage the nearby Velcron vessels as well. The next moment, the explosion was frozen in time, held in stasis by fields the Velcron could not even begin to understand. The frozen explosion hung in space like a miniature sun, completely contained. The human ships sat calmly beside it, undamaged. Then the Requiem did something that made every species watching question reality itself. It created a small portal in space and simply pushed the frozen explosion through it. The portal closed, and the explosion was gone, sent to some other dimension or location where it could detonate harmlessly. Silence filled every ship in the system. Council species watched in shock. Velcron commanders stared at their displays in disbelief. And somewhere, species who had been watching the confrontation through long-range sensors began to realize that they had been sharing the galaxy with something they never understood. Admiral Zrath Thor felt his confidence shatter completely. His 500 ships, his proven tactics, his superior experience. All of it meant nothing against weapons that operated on principles he could not comprehend. Sujin opened a channel to all Velcron ships. This is Captain Lee Sujin, to all Velcron forces. You have now seen what humanity is capable of. You have seen your weapons fail. You have seen your strongest attack neutralized. I do not enjoy this. I wish I did not have to show you these things. But you must understand. You cannot win this battle. Her face on the screen was hard but not cruel. Sad but not weak. I am now going to give you one final chance. Withdraw your fleet from this system. Leave Council space and return to your own territory. Do this, and you will live. Continue attacking, and I will be forced to erase your entire fleet from existence. Choose wisely. Zrath Thor looked at his displays. 450 ships remained. Against 12 human vessels that could not be harmed and could delete his ships at will. There was no shame in retreating from an enemy that could manipulate reality itself. But he was Velcron. He was a warrior of the old bloodlines. He would not retreat. Never, he transmitted back. The Velcron Empire does not surrender. We do not retreat. We win, or we die as warriors. Sujin closed her eyes briefly. She had hoped it would not come to this. Then I'm sorry, she said quietly. Tell them we need reinforcements. Admiral Zrath Thor watched his communication displays light up with incoming messages from his fleet. His commanders wanted orders. His captains wanted to know what to do. His warriors wanted to understand how they could fight an enemy that their weapons could not touch. He had no answers for them. Admiral, his second-in-command said quietly, perhaps we should consider the human offer. Our weapons are ineffective. Their defensive systems are beyond anything we can counter. Retreating now would preserve the fleet and allow us to develop countermeasures. Zrath Thor turned to face him. Are you suggesting we run from merchants? From traders? The Empire has never retreated. Not once in our entire history. If we start now, every species in the galaxy will see us as weak. Our conquered territories will rebel. Our allies will abandon us. But Admiral, then we die as Velcron, Zrath Thor said firmly. He opened fleet-wide communications. All ships. This is Admiral Zrath Thor. I know you are confused. I know you are afraid. But we are Velcron. We are warriors. Our ancestors conquered 7 star systems with nothing but courage and determination. We will not be defeated by 12 ships, no matter what weapons they possess. He could see doubt on his officers' faces. But they were trained to obey. Prepare for full fleet assault. All weapons. All ships. Coordinated strike. If their defensive systems can absorb individual attacks, we will see if they can handle everything we have, firing at once. Deep in the Velcron fleet, something else was happening. A coded transmission was being sent to distant space. Admiral Zruth Thor had allies in the Imperial command, and they had been watching this battle with growing concern. When the final word failed, they made a decision. They would send reinforcements. 300 more Velcron warships, each commanded by officers who believed in the Empire's destiny to rule the galaxy. They would arrive in 4 hours, and together, 800 ships would destroy these mysterious humans or die trying. On the Requiem, Captain Lee Soo-jin received a report from Memoria. Captain, long-range sensors have detected quantum communications from the Velcron flagship. They appear to be requesting reinforcements. How many? Soo-jin asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Analysis suggests approximately 300 additional warships. Estimated arrival time, 4 hours. Soo-jin's weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Ji-woo, turned in her seat. Captain, we should destroy the Velcron fleet now, before their reinforcements arrive. 800 ships will be much harder to deal with than 500. Harder for who? Soo-jin asked quietly. We can disable any number of ships. But that's not the question, is it? The question is, how many people have to die before they understand? They're calling for reinforcements, Ji-woo pointed out. They're not going to give up. Soo-jin knew she was right. The Velcron were warriors to their core. They would keep fighting until they won, or until they were all dead. She had hoped that demonstrating humanity's power would be enough to make them retreat. But she had underestimated their pride. Memoria, open a channel to Ambassador Park on the Council command ship. Ambassador Min-jun's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and worried. Captain Lee, the Council has been watching the battle. They have questions. I imagine they do, Soo-jin said. What do you need from me? The truth would be a good start, Min-jun replied. Elder Vorn and the other representatives want to know what humanity really is. They want to know how merchants and diplomats suddenly have weapons that can manipulate space and time. They want to know if they've been living next to monsters for 200 years. Soo-jin felt the weight of that question. Are we monsters, Ambassador? That depends on what we do next, Min-jun said. The Velcron are calling for reinforcements. 800 ships total. Can you stop them? Yes, Soo-jin said without hesitation. We can stop 8,000 if necessary. That's not the issue. The issue is how we stop them. We can erase their entire fleet in minutes. We have weapons that can delete matter from existence. We have defenses that make us invulnerable. We are, for all practical purposes, unbeatable in conventional warfare. Then, what's the problem? The problem is that we have to live with ourselves afterward, Soo-jin said. Every Velcron we kill, every ship we erase, that's on us. Our ancestors built these weapons and used them without restraint. It nearly destroyed Earth. We sealed them away because we understood that having the power to destroy everything means nothing if you lose your soul in the process. Min-jun was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? I want to find a way to stop the Velcron without killing all of them, Soo-jin said. I want to show them that they can't win, but I want them to survive, to learn that lesson. The question is whether they'll let us do that. The reinforcements will arrive in 4 hours, Min-jun pointed out. What's your plan? Soo-jin looked at her displays, seeing the Velcron fleet preparing for another attack. 800 ships. Hundreds of thousands of crew members. All of them warriors who believed in their cause. All of them following orders from leaders who refused to surrender. I'm going to try something, Soo-jin said. If it works, we can end this without more killing. If it doesn't, then I'll have to use maximum force. Either way, the Council is about to learn exactly what humanity became during our darkest days. The channel closed. Soo-jin turned to her crew. Memoria, how long can we maintain a full fleet time dilation field? Approximately 8 hours before reactor reserves are depleted, the AI replied. That's longer than we need, Soo-jin said. Here's what we're going to do. The Velcron are about to attack with everything they have. Let them exhaust their ammunition. Let them fire until they have nothing left. Then, before their reinforcements arrive, we're going to demonstrate exactly how outmatched they are. Commander Kim Tae-hyun looked worried. Captain, if we just sit here and absorb their attacks, they might think we're vulnerable. They might not realize we're choosing to let them fire. Then we'll make sure they understand, Sujin said. She opened a channel to all Velcron ships. Admiral Zrath Thor, I know you're planning another attack. I know you've called for reinforcements. I'm going to make you an offer. Fire everything you have at us. Use every weapon, every missile, every energy cell. Exhaust your entire fleet's ammunition. And when you're done, when you've thrown everything you have at us and accomplished nothing, I want you to really think about what that means. Zrath Thor's face appeared on her screen. You mock us? No. Sujin said sincerely. I respect you. You're warriors. You're brave. You refuse to give up. Those are admirable qualities. But courage without wisdom is just another word for suicide. Fire at us. Prove to yourself and your warriors that you tried everything. Then, maybe, you'll be ready to listen. The channel closed. On the Velcron flagship, Admiral Zrath Thor felt torn. The human captain was offering to let him attack. She was essentially giving him free shots, knowing his weapons could not harm her ships. It was the most insulting thing he could imagine, but it was also an opportunity. Maybe, if they concentrated enough fire, if they hit the human ships with absolutely everything simultaneously, maybe they could overwhelm whatever defensive systems the humans used. All ships, Zrath Thor ordered. Charge all weapons. When I give the command, I want simultaneous fire from every vessel. Plasma cannons, missiles, kinetic weapons, energy beams, everything. Hold nothing back. Throughout the Velcron fleet, crews rushed to obey. Weapons systems that had already been used were recharged. Missile bays were reloaded. Backup power was diverted to energy weapons. Every commander received the same order: fire everything. On the Council command ship, Elder Vorn watched the Velcron preparations with growing dread. Ambassador Park, the Velcron fleet is preparing for a massive assault. The human ships are not evading. Why are they not moving? Because they don't need to, Min-jun said quietly. Elder Vorn, what you're about to see is a demonstration of why humanity sealed our weapons away. Watch carefully. This is what we used to be. The Velcron fleet fired. Not in waves, not in sequential attacks, but everything at once. 450 warships releasing their entire arsenal in a single, overwhelming assault. Tens of thousands of plasma bolts filled space. Missiles by the thousands screamed toward their targets. Energy beams bright enough to damage unshielded sensors crisscrossed the battle space. Kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds created trails of distorted space-time. It was enough firepower to destroy several planets. It was the concentrated military might of an empire that had conquered 6 civilizations. It was everything the Velcron had, all focused on 12 human ships. The human vessels simply sat there and let it come. On the Requiem, Memoria announced calmly. Incoming fire detected. Estimated time to impact, 20 seconds. Quantum displacement fields, operating at maximum efficiency. All defensive systems functioning perfectly. Steady, Sujin said to her crew. Remember, we're trying to teach them a lesson, not humiliate them. Let them see that they tried their absolute best. The Velcron assault reached the human fleet. Space itself seemed to scream as impossible amounts of energy and matter converged on a single point. Sensors on the Council ships overloaded from the sheer intensity of the attack. It was like watching a star go supernova in slow motion. And then, as before, everything simply disappeared. The quantum displacement fields absorbed every single shot. Plasma bolts were shunted to pocket dimensions. Missiles vanished before impact. Energy beams ceased to exist. Kinetic projectiles were sent somewhere else. Somewhen else. The attack lasted for 5 minutes, the Velcron pouring out everything they had. When it finally ended, when the last weapon had discharged and the last missile had vanished, the human ships remained exactly where they had been. Undamaged. Unmoved. Not even dirty. In the Velcron fleet, stunned silence followed. They had fired everything. Every weapon. Every ammunition type. Every tactical option they possessed. And they had accomplished nothing. Not a scratch. Not a dent. Nothing. Zrath Thor stared at his displays, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. His scales had gone completely pale. A Velcron's body's response to devastating stress. Around him, his officers looked at each other with expressions of shock and disbelief. "What are they?" someone whispered. Before Zrath Thor could respond, the human captain opened a channel again. "You're out of ammunition. Rather's not of fails. You're out of ammunition," Sujin said. "Your reinforcements won't arrive for another 3.5 hours. Your ships are effectively defenseless. I could destroy your entire fleet right now, and there's nothing you could do to stop me." She paused, letting that sink in. "But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to show you something. Memoria. Activate full defensive grid. All ships." Around the 12 human vessels, space began to ripple. The quantum displacement fields that had been protecting individual ships suddenly expanded, linking together into a single, massive field. It grew larger and larger, eventually encompassing the entire battle space. The Council fleet, the Velcron fleet, even the nearby planets were suddenly enclosed in a bubble of altered space-time. "What you're experiencing now is a quantum displacement field at maximum power," Sujin explained. "Inside this field, I control space and time. I can make weapons disappear. I can freeze ships in temporal stasis. I can erase matter from existence. I am, essentially, a goddess of this small pocket of reality." Throughout the Velcron fleet, panic was beginning to set in. They were trapped inside this field with an enemy they could not harm, who could destroy them at will. "But here's the thing," Sujin continued, her voice softer now. "I don't want to be a goddess. I don't want to have this power. My ancestors built these weapons during a terrible war. They used them without restraint, without mercy. They killed billions of their own people. They nearly destroyed our entire species. When the war finally ended, the survivors looked at what they had become and were horrified." She paused. "We sealed these weapons away. We promised ourselves we would never use them again unless absolutely necessary. For 200 years, we kept that promise. We became traders and diplomats instead of warriors. We made friends instead of conquering territories. We chose peace." On the Velcron flagship, Zrath Thor was listening now. Really listening. "But you forced our hand," Sujin said. "You threatened our friends. You would not accept peace or diplomacy. So we had to become weapons again. And I hate it. I hate having this much power. I hate knowing I can kill all of you with a thought. Do you understand what I'm saying, Admiral?" For the first time in the conversation, Zrath Thor found his voice. "You're saying you don't want to fight." "I'm saying I wish I didn't have to," Sujin corrected. "But if you make me choose between letting you destroy the Council and using these terrible weapons, I will choose to use them. I'll hate myself afterward, but I'll do it." Long-range sensors detected new spatial distortions. The Velcron reinforcements were arriving early. 300 fresh warships emerged from their faster-than-light travel, joining their allies in the battle space. Zrath Thor felt a moment of hope. Maybe with 800 ships, they could overcome whatever the humans had. But Sujin just looked sad. "Your reinforcements are here," 300 ships with full ammunition and fresh crews. Admiral, please think carefully about what you do next. You've seen what we can do. You've seen your weapons fail. You've felt what it's like to be completely outmatched. Do you really want to watch 300 more ships and their crews die? In the arriving fleet, the ranking officer was Admiral Krishvar, a Velkron female of the warrior caste. She immediately assessed the situation, seeing the strange field surrounding the battle space. Seeing her allies' ships apparently undamaged, but motionless. Admiral Zrath Thor, she transmitted. We have arrived as requested. We are ready to assist in destroying the human vessels. Before Zrath Thor could respond, Sujin's voice cut across all channels. Admiral Krishvar, I am Captain Lee Sujin, of Earth Defense Force. Your fleet has just entered a quantum displacement field controlled by my ships. Before you do anything else, I recommend you watch this demonstration. Memoria, Sujin said quietly. Target the closest uninhabited moon. The Requiem fired. The small moon, a ball of rock roughly 200 kilometers in diameter, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, orbiting peacefully. The next moment, there was only empty space where it had been. That was 10% yield, Sujin said into the stunned silence. At maximum yield, I can erase a planetary body the size of your homeworld. I have 11 more ships with identical capabilities. Between us, we could sterilize your entire empire in a matter of days. She let that sink in. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to be genocidal monsters. We just want you to stop attacking our friends and leave council space. Is that really such an unreasonable request? Admiral Krishvar looked at the empty space where the moon had been. She had commanded warships for 30 years. She had participated in 17 conquests. She thought. She understood warfare. She understood nothing. What do you want from us? She asked, her voice shaken. I want you to live, Sujin said simply. I want your crews to go home to their families. I want your warriors to tell stories about the battle, where they faced impossible odds. I want you to remember this day and choose a better path. Is that possible? Can the Velkron Empire learn to stop conquering and start coexisting? Zrathor and Krishvar looked at each other across their communication channels. They were warriors. They were conquerors. Retreat and coexistence were not in their nature. But neither was suicide. And staying here, facing these human weapons, would be exactly that. If we withdraw, Zrath Thor asked slowly, what happens to the Empire? What happens to our territories? That's between you and the Council, Sujin said. Humanity will not dictate terms. We're not conquerors. But I imagine the Council will want certain guarantees. Probably some kind of monitoring to ensure you don't start conquering again. That would destroy the Empire, Krishvar said. The Empire destroyed itself when it decided conquest was more important than coexistence, Sujin replied. I'm just making the consequences clear. You can rebuild as something better, or you can die as you are. Your choice. For a long moment, no one spoke. The fate of the Velkron Empire hung in the balance, decided by two admirals facing an enemy they could not hope to defeat. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Every representative from every member species was present, along with observers from dozens of neutral systems. They had all come to hear humanity explain itself. Ambassador Park Min-jun stood at the central podium, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. Captain Lee Sujin stood beside him in her military uniform, representing the human forces that had stopped the Velkron Empire. Behind them, holographic displays showed footage from the battle, images that had already spread across the galaxy at light speed. Elder Vorn called the session to order. His ancient eyes were filled with confusion and something that might have been fear. Ambassador Park, this council has known humanity for 200 years. In that time, you have been our friends, our trading partners, our diplomatic allies. You help negotiate 17 peace treaties. Your merchants operate in every council system. Your engineers helped build 3 orbital stations. He gestured at the displays showing the Requiem erasing Velcron warships from existence. And yet, you hid this from us. You hid weapons that can manipulate space and time itself. You hid defensive systems that make you invulnerable. You hid the fact that you are, perhaps, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Why? The question hung in the air. Minjun looked out at the assembled representatives. Some looked angry. Others looked frightened. All of them wanted answers. Before I answer that, Minjun said carefully, I need to tell you a story. It's not a pleasant story. It's not one that humanity is proud of. But you deserve to know the truth. It's not one the men. It's not one that humanity is proud of. It's not one the Ternal starred. It's not one the Ternal. He touched a control, and the displays shifted to show Earth as it had been during the Unification Wars. Cities burning. Continents scarred by weapons that should never have existed. Casualty numbers that made even the hardened warriors in the Council flinch. 250 years ago, Earth was divided. Minjun began. Nations fought each other over resources, ideology, territory, everything that species fight about. At first, the wars were conventional. Terrible, but understandable. Then someone developed quantum manipulation technology, the ability to affect matter at the subatomic level. The ability to tear holes in space-time. New images appeared. Weapons firing beams that made reality itself scream. Defensive systems that bent light and space. Ships that could move faster than thought and hit harder than nature itself. Both sides in the conflict developed these weapons, Minjun continued, his voice heavy with old shame. Both sides believed that having overwhelming power would force the other to surrender. Instead, both sides used that power. Cities vanished. Oceans boiled. An entire continent was erased from existence. 3 billion people died. The council chamber was completely silent. These were numbers beyond most species' comprehension. The Velcron had destroyed 6 civilizations, but even they had not killed 3 billion of their own people. The war ended not because anyone won, Minjun said, but because the survivors looked at what they had become and were horrified. They had built weapons that could destroy worlds. They had used those weapons against their own species. They had become monsters. He paused, letting that sink in. So, they made a choice. They sealed the weapons away. They unified under a single government to ensure no one could start the wars again. They decided to become something different. Something better. When we developed faster than light travel and encountered the council, we had a decision to make. Did we present ourselves as the warriors we had been? Or did we present ourselves as the people we wanted to become? We chose the latter, Sujin said, speaking for the first time. We introduced ourselves as merchants and diplomats because that's what we wanted to be. We hid our military capabilities not out of deception, but out of shame. We were afraid that if anyone knew what we were capable of, they would fear us. Or worse, they would want us to use our weapons on their behalf. A Chirik representative stood up, his translation device turning his clicks into words. But you did use your weapons. You used them against the Velcron. Yes, Minjun acknowledged. Because the Velcron gave us no choice. They refused every diplomatic solution. They threatened to destroy every council world. We could have stayed hidden, kept our secret, and let our friends die. Or we could reveal what we were and stop the Velcron. We chose our friends. And now everyone knows. A Morphean delegate said, her tentacles writhing nervously. Everyone knows that humans have weapons that can erase planets. How are we supposed to feel safe with you? Access. This was the critical moment. Minjun had known this question was coming. Everything depended on how he answered it. You ask how you can feel safe with us? Minjun said quietly. Let me ask you a different question. The Velcron Empire had 800 warships. Captain Lee and her fleet had the power to destroy all of them in minutes. Every ship, every crew member, every warrior. She could have erased them from existence without breaking a sweat. But she didn't. Do you know why? The council waited. Because despite having the power to commit genocide, we choose not to. Minjun said. That's the real secret of humanity. Not that we have terrible weapons. Many species have terrible weapons. The secret is that we remember what happens when you use those weapons without restraint. We remember the price of letting power overcome wisdom. Sujin stepped forward. During the battle, I disabled 50 Velcron ships before they understood what they were facing. I could have destroyed 500. I could have erased their reinforcements when they arrived. I had the power to end the Velcron Empire completely. But instead, I spent 5 minutes letting them fire at us, exhausting their ammunition, showing them they couldn't win. Do you know why I did that? Why? Because I wanted them to survive, Sujin said simply. I wanted them to learn. I wanted them to go home and remember the day they faced an enemy they couldn't defeat, and I wanted them to choose a better path. Dead warriors can't learn. Dead warriors can't change. Dead warriors are just corpses and tragedy. She looked around the chamber. Yes, humanity has weapons that terrify you. They terrify us too. That's why we sealed them away. That's why we hoped never to use them. But we used them to protect our friends, and we used them with restraint. Doesn't that tell you something about who we are? A new voice spoke up. It was Ambassador Krishvar of the Velcron Empire, recently arrived under diplomatic protection. She stood with difficulty, her scales still pale from the trauma of the battle. I was there, she said. I commanded 300 ships. I arrived expecting to join a glorious battle. Instead, I watched humans erase a moon from existence with one shot. I knew, in that moment, that they could do the same to our homeworld, to every Velcron world. They had the power to commit genocide against my entire species. She looked at Minjun and Sujin, but they didn't. The human captain told us we could go home. She told us we could live and learn. She had the power to destroy us. And she chose mercy instead. That is the moment I understood that the Velcron Empire had not been defeated by superior weapons. We had been defeated by superior wisdom. The Velcron ambassador sat down. In the silence that followed, Elder Vorn stood up slowly. Ambassador Park, Captain Lee. I believe I speak for many here when I say that we are not angry that you hid your capabilities. We are grateful that you used them to protect us. But we must ask, what happens now? How do we proceed knowing that humanity possesses such power? Minjun had prepared for this question too. We propose a new relationship. Humanity will serve as a defensive force for the Council, but only as a last resort. We will not police the galaxy. We will not impose our will on others. We will not conquer or threaten. But if another force like the Velcron Empire emerges, if someone threatens the peace and freedom that the Council represents, then yes, we will respond. We're offering to be guardians, Sujin said. Sleeping guardians. We'll seal our weapons again, return them to the darkness, where they've waited for 200 years. We'll go back to being merchants and diplomats. But everyone will know that if needed, if there's truly no other choice, the weapons can wake up again. And you want nothing in return? A delegate asked suspiciously. No territory? No special status? No tribute? We want exactly what we've always wanted, Minjun said. To be your friends and partners. To trade peacefully. To share knowledge and culture. The only thing that changes is that now you know we can protect those friendships if necessary. Elder Vorn considered this for a long moment. Then he looked at the other representatives. I would like to propose a vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's proposal and recognizing them as defensive guardians of the Council. Please indicate. When teen use it. One by one, hands, tentacles, claws, and other appendages rose throughout the chamber. Not every species voted in favor. Some still feared humanity's power, but the overwhelming majority chose trust over fear. The motion passes, Elder Vorn announced. Ambassador Park, Captain Lee, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we accept your proposal. We trust that humanity will use its power wisely. After the session ended, Min-Jun and Su-Jin walked through the corridors of the council station. They had done what they came to do. The secret was out. But the relationships remained intact. Humanity had revealed its true nature and been accepted anyway. Do you think it will last? Su-Jin asked. The trust? I don't know, Min-Jun admitted. Some species will always fear us. Some will probably try to develop weapons to counter ours. But I think most of them understand now. We're not monsters. We're just people who made terrible mistakes and learned from them. What about the Velcron? Su-Jin wondered. Will they really change? Ambassador Krishvar is meeting with Elder Vorn right now, Min-Jun said. The council is demanding complete withdrawal from conquered territories, reparations, and a transition to a more democratic government. The old warrior culture that drove the Empire's expansion is being challenged by younger Velcron, who saw what happened and want something different. So we changed them by not destroying them, Su-Jin said thoughtfully. Maybe that's the lesson, Min-Jun replied. Power is easy. Restraint is hard. Killing is simple. Teaching is complicated. But in the long run, the hard choices are the ones that matter. They reached the human quarters, where the crew of the Requiem was preparing to return to Earth. The ship would be sealed again, returned to its dark hangar on the lunar surface. With luck, it would stay there for another 200 years or more. Su-Jin found herself thinking about her great-great-grandmother, the ship captain who had fought in the final battles of the Unification Wars. That woman had used weapons like the Requiem, without hesitation. She had killed thousands of people in the name of victory. And when the war ended, she had been among the survivors who looked at what they had done and decided never to repeat it. Captain Lee, a voice said behind them. It was Elder Vorn, accompanied by several other council representatives. May I speak with you privately? Min-Jun nodded and left, giving them space. Su-Jin waited, wondering what the ancient Thessian wanted. I watched the battle recordings very carefully, Vorn said quietly. I saw every decision you made, every choice. You had multiple opportunities to destroy the Velcron fleet completely. You chose not to. Why? Su-Jin thought about how to answer. Because my great-great-grandmother made the other choice. She used maximum force. She killed without hesitation, and when the war ended, she spent the rest of her life haunted by the faces of the people she had killed. She told my grandmother that victory without mercy is just another form of defeat. I didn't want to repeat her mistakes. Your restraint saved the Velcron Empire, Vorn said. It also saved the Council. If you had destroyed 800 warships and all their crews, we would have been grateful, but horrified. We would have wondered if we had traded the Velcron threat for a human threat. But you showed us that humans can have terrible power and still choose mercy. That is why we trust you. You have an arrest and descriptional. He paused, his ancient eyes meeting hers. It is also why I must ask you a difficult question. What would you have done if the Velcron had not surrendered? If they had kept fighting until you had no choice? Su-Jin met his gaze steadily. I would have used maximum force. I would have erased their fleet from existence. I would have done it quickly to minimize suffering. But I would have done it. And then I would have gone home and cried for every life I had taken, even though they were enemies. Because that's what it means to be human. We can do terrible things when necessary, but we never forget that they're terrible. Vorn nodded slowly. That is the answer I hope to hear. Not that you would never use your full power, but that you would never use it without cost to your soul. That is the difference between a warrior and a weapon. A weapon has no conscience. A warrior carries the weight of every choice. He turned to leave, then paused. Your great-great-grandmother would be proud of you, Captain Lee. You inherited her power, but not her burden. You learned from her mistakes without having to live through them yourself. That is a rare gift. After Vorn left, Sujin stood alone in the corridor. Through the viewport, she could see Earth in the distance, a blue and green jewel against the black of space. Somewhere on that planet, the weapons were being prepared for sealing again. The Requiem would sleep, and hopefully, would not wake for generations. But Sujin knew the weapons would never truly sleep. They would wait in the darkness, ready if needed. And future generations of humans would have to make the same choice her generation had made. To be guardians, not conquerors. To protect, not destroy. To use terrible power with wisdom and restraint. She hoped they would make the right choice. 3 months later, Ambassador Min Jun sat in a small observation lounge on the council station, watching ships come and go. Velcron vessels were withdrawing from their conquered territories, returning home to face an uncertain future. Council ships were escorting them. Not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers, ensuring the transitions went smoothly. Captain Lee joined him, holding 2 cups of tea. She had stayed at the council station as a liaison between Earth Defense Force and council security. The Requiem was back in its lunar hangar, sealed and waiting. I got a message from Admiral Krishvar, Sujin said, sitting down. The Velcron government is in chaos. Half the Empire wants to continue the old ways. The other half wants complete reform. It's going to be messy for a while. Treed. Change always is, Min Jun replied. But at least they have the opportunity to change. That's more than they would have had if we had destroyed them. Do you think we made the right choice? Sujin asked. Sometimes I wonder if we should have just stayed hidden. Let the galaxy sort out its own problems. Min Jun shook his head. The council species are our friends. We've lived alongside them for 2 centuries. When friends are in danger, you help them. That's not complicated. But now everyone knows what we are. Sujin pointed out. Some species look at us with fear now. Some with suspicion. The easy relationships we had are gone. True, Min Jun agreed. But they're being replaced with honest relationships. Before, we were friendly traders. Now we're friends who happen to be very dangerous when necessary. I think I prefer the honesty, even if it's more complicated. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, thousands of light years away, the Velcron Empire was learning to be something new. Somewhere behind them, Earth was returning to peaceful commerce and quiet diplomacy. And somewhere in between, the council species were adjusting to the reality that their gentle human friends were also the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Memoria sent me a message, Sujin said after a while. Even in storage, the ship's AI monitors certain communication channels. She detected something interesting. What's that? Several species are now studying humanity's history. Not our weapons, but our choices. They want to understand how a species can be both powerful and restrained. They want to learn from our mistakes, so they don't repeat them. Min Jun smiled. That's better than I hoped for. We spent 200 years hiding our past. Now, maybe our past can help others. There's one more thing, Sujin said. A university on Thessia is starting a new course. It's called The Ethics of Power. Lessons from Earth's Unification Wars. They've asked if I would consider teaching it after I retire from active service. Are you going to do it? I think so, Sujin said. Someone should teach the next generation that having power is not the same as having wisdom. That being able to destroy everything doesn't mean you should. That the hardest battles are not against enemies, but against your own worst impulses. Your great-great-grandmother would approve, Min Jun said. I hope so. Sujin replied quietly. I hope all our ancestors would approve. We took the weapons they built for destruction and used them for protection instead. We remembered their mistakes and chose differently. Maybe that's the best memorial we can give them. Far away, in the cold darkness of the lunar surface, the Requiem waited in its hangar. Its weapons were sealed, its systems were dormant. But somewhere in its quantum mind, Memoria dreamed of the day when a captain had chosen mercy over destruction, restraint over revenge, wisdom over power. And in that dark silence, the ancient AI understood something that its creators had not known during the terrible wars that birthed it. True strength was not measured in firepower or defensive capability. True strength was measured in the ability to have overwhelming power and choose not to use it. Humanity had learned that lesson at terrible cost. Now they were teaching it to the galaxy, not through lectures or preaching, but through simple demonstration. They had revealed themselves as weapons of terrible power, and then they had chosen to be guardians instead. It was a lesson the galaxy would remember for a very long time. And perhaps, in some distant future, when new threats emerged and new choices had to be made, that lesson would make all the difference. The war machines slept. The warriors became merchants again. The weapons waited in darkness. And across the galaxy, species looked at humanity with new understanding. They were not monsters hiding among them. They were people who had faced their own darkness and chosen to become something better. They had the power to destroy everything. And they used it only to protect. They remembered what they had been, but they chose what they would become. And that, in the end, was the real story. Not about weapons that could erase worlds, but about people who chose not to use them. Not about power without limits, but about wisdom that knew when to stop. Not about warriors who conquered, but about guardians who protected. Earth's forgotten war machines had awakened. They had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. And then, most importantly, they had gone back to sleep. That was the true power. Not the weapons themselves, but the choice to seal them away again.
Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren stood before the massive viewing window of Command Station Velrath. Below him, the gas giant swirled with storms that had raged for 1,000,000 years. He had watched those storms many times. They reminded him of war, constant, violent, beautiful in their destruction. Behind him, the door opened with a soft hiss. He did not turn around. He knew who it was. Only one person would enter without asking permission. "The Council has made its decision," said High Minister Draxa. Her voice was cold as always. She had no warmth in her. Torvax had known her for 40 years, and he had never once seen her smile. "And what has the Council decided?" Torvax asked. He still did not turn around. "You will take the Third Expeditionary Armada to the Sol System. You will subjugate the species that calls itself humanity. You will bring them into the hegemony, willing or not." Now Torvax turned. Draxa stood in her ceremonial robes, her gray skin marked with the tattoos of her rank. She held a data tablet in her three-fingered hand. "Humanity," Torvax repeated. "The new species, the ones who refuse tribute. The ones who laughed at our diplomats," Draxa corrected. "They did not simply refuse. They mocked us. They told our ambassador that they would not kneel to anyone. They said they had never kneeled and never would." Torvax felt something stir in his chest. It might have been anger. It might have been excitement. After 200 years of easy conquests, perhaps this would be interesting. "What do we know about them?" he asked. Draxa handed him the tablet. "They are young. Their civilization is perhaps 10,000 years old. They discovered faster than light travel only 300 years ago. They have expanded to 12 colony worlds. Their military is small. Our intelligence indicates they have 47 combat-capable vessels." 47, Torvax said. He almost laughed. "And you want me to bring 2,000 ships?" "The Council wants no mistakes. This species has shown disrespect. The other worlds are watching. If humanity defies us and survives, Others will think they can do the same. This must be a demonstration, a reminder of what happens to those who refuse the hegemony. Torvax scrolled through the data on the tablet. The human ships were ugly things, blocky, asymmetrical. They looked like they had been built by children. Their weapons were primitive energy projectors and guided missiles. Their shields were laughable. A single hegemony destroyer could probably defeat their entire fleet. But something caught his eye. A video file. He opened it. The recording showed the meeting between the hegemony ambassador and the human leaders. The ambassador, a proud male named Vorthus, stood in his finest robes. He read from the traditional scroll, explaining the terms of surrender, tribute, obedience, integration into the hegemony's economic systems. The usual terms. Every species heard them. Every species eventually accepted them. The humans sat across the table. There were 5 of them, 3 males and 2 females. They wore simple clothing, no ceremonial robes, no marks of rank that Torvax could identify. They looked almost bored as Vorthus read. When Vorthus finished, there was silence. Then one of the humans, an older male with gray hair, began to laugh. The others joined him. They laughed as if Vorthus had told a joke. They laughed until tears ran down their faces. The gray-haired man finally controlled himself. He wiped his eyes and leaned forward. "I'm sorry," he said, though he did not sound sorry at all. "I'm sorry, it's just that we've heard this speech before. Different species, different empires, always the same speech. Kneel or die, submit or burn." He stood up. His smile faded. His eyes became hard. "Here is our answer, Ambassador. We do not kneel. We have never kneeled. We will never kneel. Not to you, not to anyone. Go back to your masters and tell them this. If they come to our worlds with weapons, they will find us ready. If they come with peace, they will find us friendly. But if they come with chains, they will find only their own graves." The recording ended. Torvax stared at the frozen image of the human's face. There was something in those eyes, something he had not seen in a very long time. It was not fear. It was not even anger. It was certainty, absolute certainty. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Interesting?" Draxa asked. "They threatened us. They threatened the hegemony. They are insects threatening a god." "Perhaps," Torvax said, "but I have been a soldier for 200 years, High Minister. I have conquered 60 worlds. I have faced 1,000 enemies, and I have learned one thing." "What is that?" "The most dangerous enemy is not the one who fears you. It is the one who does not." Draxa made a sound of disgust. "They are primitives with 47 ships. You will have 2,000, including 12 planet crackers. This is not a war, Admiral. It is an execution." She turned and walked toward the door. Before she left, she stopped and looked back. "The Council expects victory within 3 cycles. Do not disappoint us." The door closed behind her. Torvax stood alone in the observation room. He watched the storms of Velrath Prime swirl and rage. He thought about the human's eyes. He thought about that certainty. Then he pushed the thought aside. Draxa was right. This was not a war. The hegemony had conquered 400 worlds. They had defeated species with thousands of ships, species with weapons that could crack moons, species that had ruled their own empires for millennia. Humanity was nothing, a footnote, a brief entry in the long history of hegemony expansion. He activated his communicator. "Commander Serix, report to the observation room." 3 minutes later, Serix arrived. He was young for his rank, only 60 years old, but he was smart and loyal, and Torvax trusted him more than anyone else in the fleet. "Admiral," Serix said, standing at attention, "you summoned me. We have orders. We're taking the Third Armada to the Sol system. We're going to subjugate a species called humanity." Serix nodded. I've read the intelligence reports. 47 ships, primitive technology. Should be simple. Should be, Torvax agreed. But I want extra reconnaissance. Send scout ships ahead. I want detailed scans of every human vessel, every defense platform, every military installation. Syrinx looked surprised. Admiral, our intelligence is thorough. The humans have nothing that can threaten us. Probably not, but humor an old soldier, Commander. There is something about these humans that troubles me. What troubles you, sir? Torvax thought for a moment. How could he explain it? The feeling in his gut. The instinct that had kept him alive through 100 battles. The voice that whispered caution when everyone else saw only easy victory. I watched the recording of our diplomatic meeting with them, he said. When our ambassador read the terms of surrender, they laughed. They did not rage. They did not plead. They did not negotiate. They laughed. And then they threatened us. Arrogance, Syrinx said. Young species often have more pride than sense. Perhaps, but arrogance usually comes with fear underneath. When someone acts proud, they are usually hiding their terror. These humans were not hiding anything. They genuinely were not afraid of us. Why would a species with 47 ships not fear an empire that has conquered 400 worlds? Syrinx considered this. Because they are foolish? Because they do not understand what they face? Maybe, or maybe because they know something we don't. The words hung in the air between them. Send the scouts, Torvax said finally, and prepare the fleet for departure. We leave in 10 cycles. Yes, Admiral. Syrinx turned to leave, then stopped. Sir, do you really think these humans could be a threat? Torvax looked out at the swirling storms below. No, he said. Probably not. The hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We have crushed every enemy we have ever faced. There is no logical reason to think humanity will be any different. But I have learned to trust my instincts, Commander. And my instincts tell me to be careful. My instincts tell me that something about this is wrong. What could be wrong, sir? We have 2,000 ships. They have 47. Torvax did not answer for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. In my first campaign, I served under Admiral Dreth. He was the finest commander I ever knew. Before one battle, he told me something I never forgot. He said, Torvax, numbers win wars, but sometimes, rarely, a force comes along that changes what numbers mean. And when that happens, all the ships in the galaxy will not save you. What did he mean? I don't know. He died before I could ask him. His fleet was destroyed by a species called the Vartan. They had only 100 ships against his 1,000, but they had developed a weapon that could phase through our shields. We lost everything in a single day. Syrinx's face was pale, but we eventually defeated the Vartan. Yes, it took us 40 years and cost us 10 million lives, and we only won because we captured their technology and used it against them. Torvax turned to face Syrinx. We are the hegemony. We are the greatest power this galaxy has ever known. But we are not God's commander. We can be beaten. We have been beaten before. Never forget that. I won't, sir. Good, now go. Prepare the fleet and send those scouts. Syrinx left. Torvax turned back to the window. 10 cycles later, the 3rd Expeditionary Armada departed Velrath Station. 2,000 warships, 12 planet crackers, 800,000 soldiers, the largest fleet deployed in a century, sent to crush a species with 47 ships. As the Armada entered faster than light travel, millions of citizens across the hegemony watched on their viewing screens. They cheered. They celebrated. They knew that humanity would fall, just as every other species had fallen. The hegemony was eternal. The hegemony was invincible. On the bridge of his flagship, the dominance of Velrath, Torvax watched the stars stretch and blur as they accelerated beyond light speed. He thought about the human diplomat's words. We do not kneel. We have never kneeled. We will never kneel. He thought about the certainty in those eyes. He thought about Admiral Dreth and the Varthan and the lesson he had learned so many years ago. And for the first time in a very long time, Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt doubt. The journey to the Sol system would take 15 cycles. 15 cycles to prepare, 15 cycles to plan, 15 cycles to wonder what awaited them in that distant, primitive star system. Torvax stood on his bridge and watched the blur of faster-than-light travel. Around him, his officers worked at their stations, confident and calm. They had done this many times before. They had conquered many worlds before. This was routine. This was easy. But Torvax could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was waiting for them in the Sol system. Something that would change everything. He pushed the feeling aside. He was being foolish. He was letting the human's strange confidence infect his own thinking. They were primitives. They had 47 ships. They would fall like all the others had fallen. The hegemony was eternal. The hegemony was invincible. He repeated those words to himself like a prayer. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, moving faster than light toward an uncertain destiny, Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren tried very hard to believe them. The Third Expeditionary Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 ships appeared in normal space like a swarm of metal insects, their weapons hot and their shields ready. Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren stood on the bridge of the dominance of Velrath and watched the main viewing screen. The Sol system spread out before him. 8 planets orbiting a yellow star. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. Just another primitive system in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. Report, he commanded. Commander Sarix checked his console. We have arrived at the designated coordinates, Admiral. The outer edge of the system, near what the humans call the Kuiper Belt. All ships report ready for combat. And the human fleet? Sarix studied his readings. His face changed. Something like surprise flickered across it. They're here, sir. Here? At the edge of the system? Yes, Admiral. They're holding position approximately 40,000 kilometers ahead. 47 vessels, exactly as intelligence predicted. Torvax felt his stomach tighten. That was wrong. That was very wrong. The edge of a system was the worst place to defend. Any competent commander would fall back to the inner planets, use the gravity wells and planetary defenses to their advantage. Meeting an invasion fleet at the edge of the system was either madness or supreme confidence. Show me, he ordered. The main screen shifted, magnifying the distant specks of the human fleet. Torvax leaned forward in his command chair, studying the enemy. The human ships were even uglier than the intelligence images had suggested. They were asymmetrical, covered in angles and protrusions that seemed to serve no purpose. They were painted in dark colors, black and gray, with no markings that Torvax could see. They looked like rocks with engines attached. But they also looked wrong in other ways. Ways that Torvax could not quite identify. Something about their proportions. Something about the way they sat in space. Scan them, he ordered. Full analysis. I want to know everything about those ships. The sensor officer worked his console. Then he frowned. He worked it again. His frown deepened. Sir, he said slowly, I'm having difficulty scanning the human vessels. Explain. Our sensors are returning contradictory data. The mass readings don't match the size readings. The energy signatures don't correspond to any known power source. It's as if the ships are wrong. As if they don't follow normal physical laws. Torvax felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered his conversation with Sarix before they left. Maybe they know something we don't. Best estimates, he said, keeping his voice calm. Based on what our sensors can determine, the human ships appear to be lightly armed, energy weapons of unknown type, no missile tubes that we can detect, shield generators of some kind, but I cannot determine their strength. Armor? Unknown, sir. The whole composition is unlike anything in our database. Commander Sirik stepped closer to Torvax. Admiral, he said quietly, something is wrong here. These readings make no sense. Either our sensors are malfunctioning, or those ships are far more advanced than we were told. Before Torvax could respond, a communication officer spoke up. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. The main screen flickered. A human face appeared. It was a female, middle-aged by human standards, with dark hair streaked with gray. She wore a uniform of some kind, simple and practical. Her expression was calm, almost bored. Hegemony Fleet, she said. Her voice was flat, without emotion. I am Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human space without permission. You have brought weapons of war to our home system. We know why you are here. She paused. Her eyes seemed to look directly at Torvax, though that was impossible through a recorded transmission. You were warned, she continued. Your diplomats were told what would happen if you came here with hostile intent. They did not believe us. Perhaps you did not believe them. So I will say it again, clearly, so there is no misunderstanding. She leaned forward slightly. Her calm expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened. Leave now. Turn your ships around and return to your space. This is your only mercy. If you advance, if you fire a single weapon, you will be destroyed. Every ship, every soldier. We will leave nothing but wreckage and memory. This is not a threat. This is not a warning. This is a simple statement of fact. She sat back. You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal. Admiral Chen out. The screen went dark. For a moment, no one on the bridge spoke. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. Then someone laughed. It was the tactical officer, a young male named Dreth. Did she just threaten us? 47 ships threatening 2,000? Other officers joined in the laughter. The tension on the bridge broke. Smiles appeared on faces that had been worried moments before. But Torvax did not laugh. He stared at the blank screen where Admiral Chen's face had been. He thought about her eyes. They had been just like the diplomat's eyes in the recording. Calm, certain, unafraid. Admiral? Sarix asked. Your orders? Torvax should have given the order to advance. It was the obvious move, the expected move. The hegemony did not retreat. The hegemony did not negotiate with primitives. They had come here to conquer, and they would conquer. But something made him hesitate. Send a message to Admiral Chen, he said. Ask her to explain her confidence. Ask her what makes her believe 47 ships can defeat 2,000. The communication officer looked surprised, but he obeyed. Minutes passed. Then a response came. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. She looked slightly amused now. You want to know why I'm confident? She asked. I'll tell you, Admiral, whoever you are. I'm confident because we've done this before, many times. Your hegemony is not the first empire to come to our space with dreams of conquest. You're not the first to look at our small fleet and see easy victory. And you won't be the first to learn how wrong that assumption is. She smiled. It was not a friendly smile. But I understand that words mean nothing to your kind. So let me offer you a demonstration. Send your vanguard forward. Send your best ships, your finest commanders. Let them test themselves against us. When they fail, when they die, perhaps then you will understand. The transmission ended. Torvax sat in his chair for a long moment. His officers watched him, waiting for orders. He could feel their impatience. They wanted to fight. They wanted to prove the hegemony's might. They wanted to crush these arrogant humans and return home as heroes. And perhaps they were right. Perhaps he was being foolish. Perhaps his instincts were wrong. "Admiral?" Sarix asked again. Torvax made his decision. "Send the vanguard," he ordered. 200 ships, destroyers and light cruisers, standard attack formation. Engage the human fleet and destroy it. "Yes, Admiral." The orders went out. 200 ships broke away from the main formation and advanced toward the human fleet. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons charging, their shields at full power. They were the finest ships in the hegemony navy, crewed by the finest officers. They had won 100 battles against 100 enemies. Torvax watched them go. On his screen, he could see the human ships holding position. They did not retreat. They did not spread out. They simply waited. The vanguard closed the distance. 40,000 kilometers, 30,000, 20,000. At 15,000 kilometers, the humans moved. Torvax would remember what happened next for the rest of his life. He would see it in his nightmares. He would wake up screaming, seeing those images again and again. The human ships accelerated, but the word acceleration did not describe what they did. They simply moved instantly, impossibly, from one position to another. One moment they were holding position, the next moment they were among the vanguard, weaving between the hegemony ships like fish through water. And then they fired. Torvax did not see weapons. He did not see energy beams or missiles or any recognizable form of attack. He simply saw hegemony ships cease to exist. One moment they were there. The next moment they were gone. Not destroyed, not exploded. Gone. As if they had never existed at all. "Report!" Torvax shouted. "What's happening?" The sensor officer's face was white with terror. "I don't know, sir. I don't understand. The ships are just vanishing. The humans aren't firing anything that our sensors can detect. The ships are just gone." On the screen, the vanguard was dying. Ship after ship disappeared. The hegemony vessels tried to fight back, tried to fire their weapons, tried to target the human ships. But the humans moved too fast. They dodged attacks that should have been impossible to dodge. They appeared in one place, fired, and appeared in another place before the hegemony weapons could track them. It took 11 minutes. 11 minutes for 200 hegemony warships to be completely destroyed. When it was over, the human fleet returned to its original position. 47 ships, all of them intact. Not a single one had been hit. Not a single one showed any sign of damage. The bridge of the dominance of Velrath was silent. Officers stared at their screens, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Some of them were crying. Some of them were praying to gods they had not believed in for decades. Commander Sarix approached Torvax. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. "Admiral," he said. His voice cracked. "What do we do?" Torvax could not answer. His mind was still trying to process what had happened. 200 ships, gone, vanished, in 11 minutes, against an enemy that should have been primitive, against an enemy that should have been easy. A new transmission came in. Admiral Chen appeared on screen. "That was your demonstration," she said. Her voice was still calm, still flat, as if she had not just killed thousands of hegemony soldiers. "Now you understand. Now you know what you face." She paused. "I'm giving you another chance, Admiral. I shouldn't. My government wanted me to destroy your entire fleet. They said you would not learn from anything less. But I believe in mercy. I believe that intelligent beings can recognize when they are beaten." She leaned forward. "Leave, now. Take what remains of your fleet and go home. Tell your masters what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not theirs to take. Tell them that humanity will never kneel." The transmission ended. Torvax should have listened. He should have ordered the retreat. Any sane commander would have, after what he had just witnessed. The humans had weapons and technology beyond anything the hegemony had ever faced. They could not be beaten by conventional means. Retreat was the only logical option. But Torvax was not thinking logically. He was thinking about the 12,000 years of hegemony history. He was thinking about the 400 conquered worlds. He was thinking about what would happen if he returned to hegemony space in defeat, beaten by 47 ships. He was thinking about his pride. "All ships," he commanded. His voice was hard, cold. "Full advance. Attack pattern Omega. Destroy the human fleet. Destroy everything." Syrinx grabbed his arm. "Admiral, no! You saw what they did. We can't. We're the hegemony," Torvax shouted. He pulled his arm free. "We have conquered the galaxy. We will not be beaten by primitives with 47 ships. We will crush them. We will burn their world. We will teach the universe that the hegemony cannot be defeated." His officers stared at him. Some of them looked frightened. Some of them looked doubtful. But they obeyed. They always obeyed. The Third Expeditionary Armada, 1,800 ships strong, advanced toward Earth. And somewhere ahead of them, 47 human ships waited. Admiral Chen Wei watched the hegemony fleet advance on her tactical display. She sighed and shook her head. "They're not retreating," said her tactical officer, Commander Park. "No, I didn't think they would. Pride. It's always pride with these empires." "Orders, Admiral?" Chen Wei was quiet for a moment. She thought about the hegemony soldiers on those ships. Most of them were probably just following orders. Most of them probably had families waiting for them back home. Most of them would never see those families again. She felt a brief moment of sadness. Then she pushed it aside. She had offered mercy. It had been refused. "All ships," she said, "execute Defense Protocol 7. No survivors." "Yes, Admiral." The human fleet moved forward to meet the hegemony armada. 47 ships against 1,800. The battle for Earth had begun, and the hegemony had already lost. The space between Mars and the asteroid belt became a graveyard. Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren stood on the bridge of the dominance of Velrath and watched his fleet die. Ship after ship vanished from his tactical display. Red lights blinked out, one after another, like stars being extinguished by an angry god. "Battle Group 7 is gone, Admiral," Commander Syrinx reported. His voice had gone flat, empty. He had stopped feeling the horror hours ago. Now there was only numbness. "Battle Group 8 is engaging the enemy. He stopped, looked at his screen. "They're gone too." Torvax said nothing. There was nothing to say. He had committed his entire fleet to the attack, and the humans were destroying it piece by piece. The battle had lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of constant fighting. 6 hours of watching his ships disappear. The hegemony had tried everything. They had tried overwhelming force in sending hundreds of ships at once. The humans had simply killed them all. They had tried flanking maneuvers, trying to catch the human ships from multiple angles. The humans had somehow known where every ship would be before it got there. They had tried retreat and regroup tactics, pulling back to reform their lines. The humans had followed them, never giving them time to organize. Nothing worked. Every tactic that had won the hegemony 1,000 victories failed utterly against this enemy. "How many ships do we have left?" Torvax asked. Syrinx checked his console. 423, Admiral, plus the planet crackers. 423. They had started with 2,000. They had lost over 1,500 ships in 6 hours. And the human fleet? All 47 ships still active. Our weapons cannot seem to damage them. Either they dodge every attack, or on the rare occasions we score a hit, their shields absorb it completely. Torvax closed his eyes. He remembered the confidence in Admiral Chen's eyes. Now he understood. She had not been arrogant. She had simply known the truth. "Admiral," the censor officer called out, I'm detecting something strange. The human ships are talking to each other. Of course they are. They're coordinating their attacks. No, sir, I mean they're talking, but there's no communication signal. I'm not detecting any transmissions between them. No radio, no tight beam, no quantum entanglement, nothing. But they're moving in perfect coordination, as if they know exactly what every other ship is going to do. Torvax opened his eyes. That's impossible. Ships can't coordinate without communication. I know, sir, but it's what I'm seeing. It's like they share one mind. One mind. 47 ships acting as one. It would explain their impossible coordination, their ability to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. But it raised more questions than it answered. What kind of technology could link ships together like that? What kind of species had the humans become? Sir, another officer said, I'm intercepting human communication traffic, not between ships, but internal to individual vessels. Crew talking to each other. Put it through. Static filled the bridge, then cleared. Human voices emerged, speaking their strange language. The ship's translator converted it in real time. Another wave coming in from Sector 7. I count 30 ships. I see them. Taking targets Alpha through Delta. You get Echo through Hotel. Copy that. This is getting boring. When are they going to learn? Same as the Tau Ceti incursion. No imagination, these Empire types. At least the Tau Ceti ships were pretty. These things look like garbage barges. Laughter. The humans were laughing. In the middle of a battle that had killed over 1 million hegemony soldiers, they were laughing and joking like this was routine. Commander Park, how long until we're done here? At this rate, another 3 or 4 hours, unless they finally decide to run. They won't. Pride won't let them. Same as always. More laughter. Then the channel closed. Torvax felt something cold settle in his chest. It was fear. Pure, simple fear. He had not felt fear in battle for 100 years, but he felt it now. The humans were not struggling. They were not straining their resources or pushing their limits. They were bored. This was routine for them. They had done this before. The Tau Ceti incursion, Torvax said aloud. They mentioned Tau Ceti. Tau Ceti is a star system approximately 12 light years from Sol, Sarek said. Our records show it's uninhabited. Check again. Check for any historical records. Any records at all. Sarek worked his console. Minutes passed. Then his face went pale. Admiral, there's something here. Very old records. Classified at the highest level. I shouldn't even be able to see this, but the battle encryption protocols are giving me emergency access. What does it say? 3,000 years ago, the hegemony detected an unknown fleet in the Tau Ceti system. A small fleet, approximately 50 ships. A task force was sent to investigate. 300 vessels. And the task force was destroyed. Completely. Not a single ship survived. The records indicate that the unknown fleet appeared to use technology far beyond hegemony capabilities. After the incident, the hegemony classified everything and erased Tau Ceti from all star maps. The official position became that Tau Ceti was uninhabited and unimportant. Torvax felt the cold in his chest spread through his entire body. We've met the humans before, he whispered, 3,000 years ago. We attacked them, and they destroyed us, and we covered it up. We pretended it never happened. It would appear so, Admiral. Then why didn't they attack us? Why did they let us grow and expand for 3,000 years? I don't know, sir. No one knew. The humans had been watching the hegemony for 3,000 years, watching them conquer and enslave, watching them build an empire on the suffering of hundreds of species. And they had done nothing until now. Admiral, the tactical officer said, the humans are broadcasting again. Admiral Chen appeared on screen. She looked tired but calm. Admiral of the Hegemony Fleet, she said, I see you're still fighting. I admire your determination even if I think it's foolish. But I have to inform you that this battle is over. You've lost too many ships. Even if you retreated now, you don't have enough vessels to pose any future threat to us. She paused. But I know you won't retreat. Your pride won't let you. So I'm going to give you one more chance to save some of your people. Surrender now. Order your remaining ships to power down their weapons and shields. We will take you prisoner, treat you humanely, and eventually return you to hegemony space. Her eyes hardened. If you don't surrender, we will continue until every ship is destroyed. There will be no escape, no survivors. This is your final offer. The transmission ended. Syrinx looked at Torvax. Admiral, perhaps we should... No. Torvax's voice was hard, brittle. Something inside him had broken during this battle, but not his pride. Never his pride. We will not surrender to primitives. We will not shame the hegemony. Admiral, we've lost 1,500 ships. We're watching our people die by the thousands. This isn't about pride anymore. This is about survival. There is no survival without honor, Torvax shouted. He stood from his chair, his body shaking with rage and fear and desperation. If we surrender, the hegemony is finished. Every species we've conquered will rise up. Every enemy we've ever made will sense weakness. The empire will fall. And if we die here, who will warn the hegemony? Who will tell them what we faced? The question hung in the air. Torvax had no answer. Then his tactical officer spoke. Admiral, there is one option we haven't tried. What? The planet crackers, we still have 12 of them. They're at the rear of the fleet, protected by our remaining combat ships. If we could get them close enough to Earth, even a single shot might be enough to force the humans to surrender. Planet crackers. Weapons designed to shatter worlds. They had been brought as a final punishment, a way to make an example of humanity if they resisted too strongly. Torvax had planned to use them only as a last resort. This was the last resort. Do it, he ordered. All remaining combat ships form a protective screen around the planet crackers. Push toward Earth at maximum speed. Even if we lose every other ship, get those weapons in range. The orders went out. The remaining 400 hegemony ships formed a desperate formation around the 12 massive planet crackers. They began to push toward Earth, the blue-green planet that hung in the distance like a jewel. The humans responded immediately. Their 47 ships formed a line between the hegemony fleet and Earth. They began to advance, picking off hegemony ships with the same terrifying efficiency they had shown throughout the battle. But the hegemony pushed through. For every ship that died, another took its place. The planet crackers crept closer. 200,000 kilometers. 100,000. 50,000. We're in range, the tactical officer shouted. Planet crackers are charging. Torvax watched his screen. Human ships were everywhere, destroying his fleet ship by ship. But the planet crackers were still there. All 12 of them. Fire, fire, everything. The planet crackers released their payloads. 12 projectiles, each one carrying enough destructive power to crack a planet's crust and turn its surface to molten rock. They accelerated toward Earth at impossible speeds. For a moment, Torvax felt triumph. Even if the humans destroyed his entire fleet, Earth would burn. Humanity would pay for what they had done today. Then the projectiles stopped. They simply stopped. In the middle of empty space, thousands of kilometers from Earth, they hung motionless, as if some giant hand had caught them. What's happening? Torvax demanded. Why did they stop? I don't know, sir. There's some kind of energy field around them. Our sensors can't identify it. It's like gravity, but targeted, controlled. They caught our projectiles. Caught them. The humans had caught planet-cracking weapons in mid-flight. as if they were nothing, as if they were toys thrown by a child. And then the projectiles began to move again, but not toward Earth. They turned, slowly, impossibly. They turned until they were pointing back at the hegemony fleet, back at the planet crackers that had fired them. "No!" Torvax screamed. "Evasive action! All ships, evasive action!" It was too late. The projectiles accelerated. 8 of the planet crackers were destroyed in the first second, caught by their own weapons. The remaining 4 tried to flee, but the projectiles followed them, hunting them, never missing. In less than a minute, all 12 planet crackers were gone, destroyed by their own weapons. Torvax stared at the screen. His mind had gone blank. He could not process what he had seen. The humans had not just defeated their weapons. They had turned them around. They had used the hegemony's own strength against them. "Admiral," Syrinx's voice was very quiet. "We have 153 ships remaining. 153 out of 2,000. The humans are broadcasting again." Admiral Chen appeared. For the first time, she looked angry. "That was a mistake," she said. "Those planet crackers, that was a weapon designed for genocide. A weapon meant to kill billions of innocent people. We gave you chances. We offered mercy. And you tried to burn our world." She leaned forward. "No more mercy. No more chances. Commander Park, execute Protocol Omega. Kill them all." The transmission ended. Torvax looked at Syrinx. Syrinx looked back at him. They both knew what was coming. "It has been an honor serving with you, Commander," Torvax said. "And you, Admiral." Around them, the remaining ships of the 3rd Expeditionary Armada prepared for their final battle. The human fleet moved forward. 47 ships, 153 targets. In 9 minutes, it would all be over. And the greatest armada the hegemony had ever assembled would be nothing but wreckage and memory, drifting in the cold space around a planet that had refused to kneel. Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren woke up in pain. His head felt like someone had driven a spike through it. His body ached in places he did not know could ache. His mouth was dry and his eyes refused to focus. Slowly, memory returned. The battle, the defeat, the planet crackers turning around, the human ships closing in for the kill. He had given the order to make a final stand, knowing it was hopeless. He had watched the last of his ships die around him, and then nothing. Darkness. He should be dead. Why was he not dead? He forced his eyes to focus. He was lying on some kind of bed in a small room with white walls. Medical equipment surrounded him, but it was like no medical equipment he had ever seen. Smooth, elegant, almost organic in design. A soft light came from panels in the ceiling. He tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body, and he fell back with a groan. "Easy," a voice said. "You took a lot of damage when we boarded your ship. Our medical technology is good, but you still need time to heal." Torvax turned his head. A human sat in a chair beside his bed, a female wearing the same simple uniform he had seen on Admiral Chen. She had dark skin and short gray hair, and her face was lined with age. Her eyes were calm and patient. "Who are you?" Torvax asked. His voice came out as a croak. "Captain Elena Vance, United Earth Defense Force. I commanded the boarding party that took your flagship." "Took my flagship?" Torvax remembered the final moments. The dominance of Velrath, surrounded by human ships. His crew preparing to fight to the death. "We did not surrender. My crew would have fought." "They tried for about 30 seconds. Vance smiled slightly. "We used targeted paralysis fields. No one was hurt, but no one could resist either. Your crew is being held in comfortable quarters. They're safe." Torvax stared at her. "Why? Why what? Why did you not kill us? You destroyed our fleet, nearly 2,000 ships. Why take prisoners?" Vance was quiet for a moment. She looked at Torvax with something that might have been pity. Because killing is not our goal, Admiral. It never was. We defend ourselves when we must. We fight when we have no choice. But we do not seek death. We do not enjoy destruction. Every hegemony soldier who died in this battle was a tragedy, a waste, a life that did not need to end. Torvax did not understand. In the hegemony, victory meant complete destruction of the enemy. Mercy was weakness. Prisoners were either enslaved or executed. The idea of capturing enemies and treating them well was strange to him. "You are strange creatures," he said. "So we've been told." Vance stood up. "Can you walk? There's someone who wants to speak with you." Torvax forced himself to sit up. The pain was bad, but manageable. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. He swayed, but did not fall. "Follow me," Vance said. She led him out of the medical room and into a corridor. The ship around him was unlike any vessel he had ever seen. The walls seemed to flow into each other, curves instead of angles. The lighting was soft and warm. There was no hum of engines, no vibration of machinery. The ship felt almost alive. They walked for several minutes through winding corridors. Torvax saw no other humans, no crew, no guards. Just empty passageways stretching in all directions. "Where is everyone?" he asked. "This ship doesn't need a large crew. Most of its functions are automated or controlled directly by neural link. The 47 ships in our defense fleet had a total crew of about 300 people. Torvax stopped walking. 300? 300 people operated 47 warships that destroyed 2,000. Yes, is that surprising? Surprising was not the word. It was impossible. Running a fleet that size required tens of thousands of crew members. The logistics alone would need hundreds of people. How could 300 humans have done what the hegemony could not do with millions? Vance smiled at his confusion. "You have many questions, Admiral. The person we're going to see can answer them better than I can." They continued walking. Finally, they reached a large door that opened automatically as they approached. Beyond was a room that took Torvax's breath away. It was a garden, a real garden, with trees and grass and flowers, somehow contained inside a ship. A stream ran through the middle, and birds sang in the branches above. Through a transparent ceiling, Torvax could see stars. Sitting on a bench beside the stream was an old human male. He had white hair and a deeply lined face, and he wore simple clothes instead of a uniform. He looked up as Torvax and Vance entered. "Admiral Kren," he said. His voice was warm. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Torvax looked at Vance. She nodded. He walked to the bench and sat down, keeping a careful distance from the old man. "Who are you?" Torvax asked. "My name is David Chen. Admiral Chen Wei is my granddaughter. I am, well, I suppose you could call me a historian, a keeper of memory. I asked to speak with you because I believe you deserve to understand what happened today, and why." Torvax waited. David Chen looked up at the stars visible through the ceiling. "Your intelligence told you that humanity was a young species, that we discovered faster than light travel 300 years ago, that we were primitive, weak, easily conquered. Yes, your intelligence was wrong." David Chen turned to look at Torvax. His eyes were very old, older than his face suggested. "Humanity has been traveling the stars for 6,000 years. Torvax felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. "That's impossible. We would have known. We would have seen you. You did see us. 3,000 years ago at Tau Ceti, your ships attacked a human colony. We destroyed them. Your government covered it up and pretended it never happened." The classified files, the records Syrinx had found during the battle, they had been real. "But that means, it means we have been watching you for 3,000 years, watching you conquer, watching you enslave, watching you build your empire on the broken backs of 100 species. Why? Torvax demanded. If you had the power to stop us, why did you not? David Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was sad. Because we wanted to believe you could be better. We want to believe that your species, like so many others, would eventually outgrow its cruelty. Every civilization goes through stages of development. War, empire, eventually peace. We hoped you would reach that final stage on your own. But we didn't. No, you didn't. You kept conquering. You kept enslaving. You kept spreading your empire further and further. And finally, you came to Earth. You came to our home. And we knew that if we did not stop you, you never would stop. Torvax thought about this. His entire understanding of the galaxy was crumbling. Everything he believed about human weakness, about hegemony strength, about the natural order of things, was wrong. How? He asked. How did you become so powerful? How did a species that appears so primitive develop technology that makes ours look like children's toys? David Chen smiled. We are not what we appear, Admiral. Humans have always been good at appearing weak. It's a survival strategy. Look harmless, and your enemies underestimate you. He stood up and walked to the stream. He bent down and let the water flow over his fingers. 6,000 years ago, humanity was like you. We built ships and explored the stars. We met other species. We fought wars. We made mistakes. Many mistakes. He straightened and turned back to Torvax. But we learned. We realized that the path of conquest led only to destruction, not just of our enemies, but of ourselves. The more we conquered, the more we lost of what made us human. So we chose a different path. What path? The path of patience, of growth, of preparation. We stopped expanding our empire. We withdrew to a handful of systems and focused on developing ourselves, our technology, our minds, our understanding of the universe. He gestured at the ship around them. This ship is powered by zero-point energy extracted from the fabric of space-time itself. Our weapons manipulate matter at the quantum level. Our shields use controlled gravitational fields. Our communications are instantaneous across any distance because they do not move through space at all. They move through dimensions you do not even know exist. Torvax's head was spinning. And you hid all this for thousands of years? We seeded ourselves across 1,000 hidden worlds, colonies that appear on no map, using technology that cannot be detected by conventional sensors. We watched the galaxy. We waited. We hoped. Hope for what? Hope that we would never have to use our weapons again. Hope that species like yours would learn to be better. David Chen's voice was heavy with sadness. We were disappointed. Torvax sat in silence for a long time. He thought about his fleet, destroyed in hours. He thought about the hegemony's proud history, suddenly revealed as a pale shadow of what humanity had achieved. He thought about everything he had believed and everything that had turned out to be wrong. What happens now? He asked finally. Now you go home, David Chen said. Torvax looked up, surprised. You're letting me go? We're letting all of you go. Your crew, your soldiers, everyone who survived. We're giving you a ship, enough supplies to reach hegemony space, and a message for your council. What message? David Chen walked to stand directly in front of Torvax. His old eyes were hard now, hard and cold. The message is this: the hegemony will disband. Every conquered world will be freed. Every slave will be released. You have 100 cycles to comply. There will be no negotiation, no extension, no second chance. And if you refuse, we will not send ships. We will simply arrive on every hegemony world simultaneously, and we will end your empire ourselves. Not in months, not in years, in days. Torvax felt cold. He believed every word. You expect the council to accept this? They have ruled for 12,000 years. They will not simply give up their power. They will accept it or they will be destroyed. Those are the only options. We hoped you would learn mercy on your own. You didn't. So now we will teach you. David Chen's eyes softened slightly. This is not revenge, Admiral. We take no pleasure in this. But we cannot allow the suffering to continue. Too many species have died under your rule. Too many worlds have burned. It ends now. Torvax stood. His body was shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something he could not quite name. I understand, he said. Do you? Do you really? I understand that my people have been living in a lie. I understand that we are not the greatest power in the galaxy. I understand that we have been allowed to exist by the grace of a species we dismissed as primitive. He met David Chen's eyes. I will deliver your message. I do not know if the council will listen, but I will make them understand what I understand now. And what is that? Torvax thought for a moment. That the hegemony's time has ended, that the age of empire is over, and that humanity is not a footnote in galactic history. Humanity is its next chapter. David Chen nodded slowly. Then perhaps there is hope for your species after all, Admiral. Perhaps you can learn, as we did, to be better. He gestured to Vance, who had waited silently throughout the conversation. Captain Vance will take you to your ship. Your people are already aboard. You should reach hegemony space in approximately 15 cycles. Torvax hesitated. There was one more question he needed to ask. Why me? Why did you save me specifically? Why not let me die with my fleet? David Chen smiled. Because someone has to tell the story. Someone has to make the council understand what they face. And because I saw the recordings from before the battle, you hesitated before attacking. You sensed something was wrong. You tried to be cautious. He placed a hand on Torvax's shoulder. You are not a good man, Admiral. You have conquered worlds and killed millions. But you are capable of doubt. You are capable of learning. That makes you valuable. He stepped back. Go home, Admiral Torvax Kren. Tell your masters what you have learned, and pray that they are wise enough to listen. Torvax bowed his head. Then he turned and followed Captain Vance out of the garden, away from the stars toward a ship that would carry him home. Home to deliver a message that would change everything. Home to end an empire. The council chamber of the hegemony of unified worlds was the most impressive room in the galaxy. That was what every citizen of the hegemony believed, and that was what the council wanted them to believe. The chamber was carved from a single piece of black stone, taken from the heart of a mountain on the hegemony homeworld. It stretched upward for 100 meters, its walls covered with gold and precious gems. Statues of ancient conquerors lined the walls, their stone eyes watching everyone who entered. At the far end of the chamber sat the council itself. 12 high ministers, each one representing 1 billion citizens. They sat on thrones of polished metal, raised above the floor so that anyone who came before them had to look up. Above them, carved into the ceiling, was the seal of the hegemony, a clenched fist holding a burning star. For 12,000 years, this chamber had been the center of power. Every important decision had been made here. Every war had been declared here. Every conquered species had been brought here to kneel and beg for mercy. Today, the chamber was full. Word had spread that the Third Expeditionary Armada had returned. Word had spread that Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren wanted to address the council. Word had spread that something had gone wrong at Earth. But no one knew the truth. Not yet. Torvax stood at the entrance to the chamber. He wore his dress uniform, freshly cleaned and pressed. His medals hung on his chest, decorations from 100 campaigns. But they felt different now. Heavier, like they were made of lead instead of gold. Captain Vance's ship had brought him to the edge of hegemony space, and then vanished. Just disappeared, as if it had never existed. His crew had been given a small transport, enough to carry them home. 15 cycles of travel. 15 cycles to think about what he would say. Now he was here. Now it was time. He walked forward into the chamber. His boots echoed on the stone floor. 1,000 eyes watched him. Ministers and generals and advisors and guards, all waiting to hear what had happened to the greatest armada the hegemony had ever assembled. High Minister Draxa sat at the center of the council. She was the one who had given him his orders. She was the one who had sent 2,000 ships to their deaths. Fleet Admiral Torvax Kren, she said. Her voice was cold as always. You have returned. Alone. Not alone, High Minister. 47,000 of my crew survived. They are being processed and returned to their families as we speak. 47,000 out of 800,000. Drax's voice cut like a knife. And the fleet? Destroyed. The word hung in the air. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered in shock. Torvax heard feet shuffling, bodies shifting, the sound of 1,000 people trying to understand what they had just heard. Destroyed? Another council member asked. How many ships were lost? All of them, all 2,000 ships, including all 12 planet crackers. The chamber exploded with noise. Ministers shouted questions. Generals demanded explanations. Advisors argued with each other about what this meant. The guards looked nervous, their hands moving toward their weapons as if expecting an attack. Draxa raised her hand. Silence fell. Explain, she commanded. Torvax took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech 100 times on the journey home, but now standing before the council, the words seemed inadequate. The humans were not what our intelligence suggested, he began. They are not a young species with primitive technology. They are ancient. They have been traveling the stars for 6,000 years. They have technology so advanced that it makes ours look like children's toys. Impossible, Draxa said. Our scouts surveyed their system. They have 47 small ships, outdated weapons, basic shields. What our scouts saw was what the humans wanted them to see. The humans have been hiding their true capabilities. They have been watching us for thousands of years, waiting to see if we would learn to be better. We didn't. So when we attacked, they showed us what they really are. Torvax pressed a button on his wrist communicator. The ceiling of the chamber came alive with images, recordings from the battle, ships disappearing without explosions, planet crackers being caught in mid-flight and turned around, the human fleet moving in ways that violated the laws of physics. The council watched in stunned silence. Our weapons could not touch them, Torvax continued. Our shields could not stop them. Our tactics were useless. They destroyed 200 ships in 11 minutes. They destroyed the rest over the following 6 hours. At no point did they lose a single vessel. At no point did they seem even slightly threatened. The recordings ended. The chamber was silent. And they let you live? Draxa asked. Her voice was different now, uncertain. They captured you instead of killing you? Yes, they wanted me to deliver a message. Torvax reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data chip. This contains the full recording of my conversation with their representative, but I can tell you the message in simple words. He looked at each council member in turn. The hegemony will disband. Every conquered world will be freed. Every slave will be released. We have 100 cycles to comply. The chamber erupted again. This time the noise was different. It was the sound of anger, of outrage, of 12,000 years of pride being wounded. They dare to threaten us? One minister shouted. They destroy one fleet and think they can dictate terms? We will build more ships, another cried. We will gather every vessel in the hegemony and crush them. They have revealed themselves. Now we know where they are. We can strike back. Draxa did not join the shouting. She sat very still, watching Torvax with her cold eyes. "And if we refuse their terms?" she asked quietly. "What then?" The chamber fell silent again. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Torvax met Drax's gaze. "They said they will not send ships. They will simply arrive on every hegemony world simultaneously, and they will end our empire in days." "More threats," a general scoffed. "No species can attack every world at once. It's impossible." "With respect, General, before today I would have said it was impossible to destroy 2,000 ships with 47. I would have said it was impossible to catch planet crackers in mid-flight. I would have said many things were impossible." Torvak's voice hardened. "I was wrong. We have been wrong for a very long time." "What are you suggesting?" Draxon asked. "That we surrender? That we give up everything the hegemony has built over 12,000 years? "I'm suggesting that we don't have a choice." The chamber erupted again, but Torvax spoke over the noise. "Listen to me. All of you, listen. I have been a soldier for 200 years. I have fought in 100 campaigns. I have never run from a battle in my life. But I know when a war is lost before it begins. And this war is lost." He walked forward until he was standing directly beneath the council thrones. "The humans are not like any enemy we have ever faced. They are not like the species we conquered. They are not fighting for territory or resources or revenge. They are fighting because they believe our empire is wrong, because they believe slavery is wrong, because they believe we must be stopped." "And you agree with them?" Draxa asked. Her voice was deadly calm. Torvax hesitated. A month ago, he would have said no without thinking. The hegemony was right. The hegemony was always right. Conquest was the natural order. The strong ruled the weak. But that was before Earth, before he had seen what true power looked like, before he had spoken with David Chen and understood how small the hegemony really was. "I think," Torvax said slowly, "that we have been living in a lie. We told ourselves we were the greatest power in the galaxy. We told ourselves that our empire would last forever. We told ourselves that anyone who opposed us was primitive and weak." He looked up at the council. "The humans let us believe that lie. They let us grow and expand because they hoped we would become better on our own. They hoped we would learn mercy. We didn't. And now they are done hoping." "You speak of them as if they are gods," Draxa said. "They might as well be. Compared to them, we are nothing. Less than nothing. They have technology we cannot understand, power we cannot match, knowledge we cannot imagine. They have been watching us for 3,000 years, and we never knew." Torvax took a deep breath. "But they are also offering us a chance. They could have destroyed our entire fleet and every soldier aboard. They didn't. They let us live. They let me come home to deliver this message. That was not mercy, High Minister. That was a demonstration." "A demonstration of what?" "A demonstration of how completely they control this situation. They know they could destroy us whenever they want. They're giving us the chance to save ourselves instead." The chamber was silent now. The anger and outrage had faded, replaced by something else. Fear, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. Draxa sat motionless on her throne. Her cold eyes studied Torvax for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You truly believe we cannot fight them?" "I know we cannot fight them. I watched them destroy 2,000 ships without breaking a sweat. I listened to their communications during the battle. They were bored, High Minister. They were joking and laughing while they killed 1 million of our soldiers. This was routine for them. We are not a threat to them. We never were." Draxa closed her eyes. For the first time in Torvax's memory, she looked old, tired, defeated. "What would you have us do?" she asked. "Accept their terms. Disband the empire. Free the conquered worlds. Release the slaves. And if the council refuses?" Torvax did not answer immediately. He thought about what David Chen had told him. He thought about the hidden human colonies spread across 1,000 worlds. He thought about the technologies that could move ships instantaneously, that could catch planet crackers in mid-flight, that could destroy fleets without visible weapons. If the Council refuses, he said finally, then in 100 cycles the hegemony will cease to exist, not through gradual decline, not through civil war, through complete and instant destruction. Every ship, every station, every military installation, gone, and then the humans will free the slaves and liberate the worlds themselves. He looked at Draxa. We can either be the species that chose to be better at the end, or we can be the species that was too proud to survive. Those are our only options. Draxa opened her eyes. She looked at the other council members. Some of them looked angry still. Some of them looked frightened. Some of them looked thoughtful. You say they have been watching us for 3,000 years, she said. Why now? Why did they finally reveal themselves? Because we attacked their home. Because we brought planet crackers to threaten their families. Because we showed them that we would never stop on our own. Torvak's voice was heavy. Because we proved that they were right about us. The chamber was silent for a long time. Ministers whispered to each other. Generals stared at the floor. The weight of 12,000 years of history pressed down on everyone in the room. Finally, Draxa spoke. We will consider your words, Admiral. The Council will debate this matter and reach a decision. There is nothing to debate, High Minister. There is only the choice, submit or die. There is always something to debate. Drax's voice had regained some of its cold edge. You are dismissed. Torvax bowed his head. He had done what he could. He had delivered the message. What the Council did with it was beyond his control. He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, he could hear the whispers beginning, arguments starting. The slow process of decision-making that had governed the hegemony for millennia. He wondered if they would make the right choice. He wondered if they were capable of making the right choice. At the door, he paused and looked back. 100 cycles, he said. That's how long you have. I suggest you use them wisely. Then he walked out of the chamber, leaving the council to their deliberations. Outside, the sun was setting over the hegemony homeworld. The sky was painted in the shades of orange and red, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Torvax stood on the steps of the council building and watched the day end. Somewhere out there, beyond those stars, humanity waited. An ancient species that had learned patience, a power that had been watching for thousands of years, a force that could not be stopped. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered 400 worlds. They had believed themselves eternal, invincible, unstoppable. They had been wrong. Torvax thought about David Chen's words. Perhaps there is hope for your species after all. Perhaps you can learn, as we did, to be better. He hoped that was true. He hoped the council would find the wisdom to accept defeat. He hoped the hegemony could become something new, something better, something worthy of surviving. But he was not sure. The sun finished setting. Night fell over the homeworld. Stars filled the sky, thousands of them, each one representing a world the hegemony had claimed as its own. Soon those worlds would be free. One way or another, the hegemony had 100 cycles left, 100 cycles to decide their fate, 100 cycles to choose between pride and survival. Torvax walked down the steps and disappeared into the night. Behind him, inside the council chamber, the debate continued. Arguments raged. Voices rose and fell. The fate of an empire hung in the balance, and far away, on a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star, humanity waited, patient, ready, watching. They had been waiting for 3,000 years. They could wait a little longer, but not much longer. The age of empire was ending. The age of freedom was beginning. and the galaxy would never be the same.